feature presentation.
Welcome back to the 8th best movie podcast in Canada. I am one of your hosts,
Whoa.
Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's not David Zaslaz, but he's allergic to tomatoes, Eric Marchand.
Matt, with your bumpy introduction and, me
Hey.
having a hard time even logging into this podcast episode, this could have been a complete write-off.
Oh man, I can't wait to talk to you. There's so much to talk about. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome. If this is your first time, strap in. If this is not your first
David
time, you know what to
Strathairn
expect.
straps in.
Am I going to talk about going to Niagara Falls in the US for like 45 minutes before we even talk about big, huge movie news that is happening basically as we're speaking? I mean, it's pretty much done now because we're recording at like 9 p.m. Eastern, but we got so much to talk about. Today, we're going to talk about I went to Niagara Falls on the civic holiday. Was it a civic holiday? Is that what they call it in August?
It's a civic holiday in Canada, yeah. Ontario.
I went over to Target. I got Star Wars Villainous. I got some Cherry Coke Zero. I got some Mountain Dew Spark Zero. I got some caffeinated bubbly. Did I get a pack of Flamin' Hot like random chip bags, some Flamin' Hot popcorn? I got we ate at Olive Garden. Oh man, what a day. What a day. Got up really early and went with Nevis. There's not much else to say about that other than the border wasn't too bad. Had to do arrive can to even get back, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about HBO Max and just Warner Discovery and what the hell is going on over there. Batgirl was canceled. Scoob 2 was canceled. No one's talking about that part. They're consolidating the male skewing HBO Max with the female skewing Discovery Plus. So men and women finally can come together.
For 90 Day Fiancé.
Yeah, the 90 Day Fiancé universe. Have you seen this? And oh my god, we're gonna talk about that. We're talking TIFF Talk. We're talking Midnight Madness. We're talking Discovery. We're gonna talk about the Daniels signing with Universal. We're gonna talk about a new Ninja Turtles movie. I don't know what else I'm missing, but we're gonna talk about a lot today.
Yep. Cool.
Great. Thank you for your input. How are you doing?
Well, I mean, I am not having the time of my life in comparison to you. It's been a bit of a bummer, Matt. My grandfather went to a hospice appointment, so I'm not going across the border or living my dreams, but I'm okay.
I saw Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Okay,
as well.
Okay, we're both even now.
I wasn't gonna make. I won't make it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You can. We're friends.
I'm sorry, man.
No, I know. Yeah, so I've just kind of been like watching some movies, surprise, like Bullet Train and Bodies, and the Predator movies, which we talked about quite a bit on the Prey review. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, and this TIFF stuff is also getting me very excited and something to kind of look forward to and take my mind off of other things for a little bit and doing the podcast. So I apologize if I'm not as, exciting,
Nah, you will be. But I understand, man. Like I totally get that, and I'm sorry about that. That's just shit spot. That's a shit spot, but I have been there, so I know what you're going through. So I was gonna make a joke about Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, but I'll get to that eventually. That shit, man. Yeah, Bodies, and Bullet Train. We'll probably have reviews for those. I had to skip both. I had to skip one for Harry Potter, which I'll get to.
In retrospect, do you regret that?
I don't know, because what you've told me about Bullet Train, I'm like, I don't know if I really like it. It seemed like a Sophie's choice.
Well, how long was Cursed Child?
3.5 hours.
You might have some regrets.
So, yeah.
I mean, Bullet Train does feel long for what it is, but I mean, it's just over 2 hours. So,
yep. But I mean, we could just dilly dally. I can talk about Niagara Falls.
You went to Target,
but yeah, it was great.
You mentioned the border thing was okay, but like, what was the process like for such a quick trip?
It was really normal. Like it felt like anytime Nevis and I. So for people that don't know, Eric and I live in Toronto and or the GTA. Um, it's about an hour and a half drive to get to Niagara Falls or Buffalo in the U.S. Depending on how long you have to wait at the border, which is really nothing. So Nevis and I like to go every once in a while and pick up some treats at Target and I mean, we talked about this on the Vengeance review. There are a lot of things in Canada, even though we're so close to the US, like we don't have a Dunkin' Donuts, we don't have Olive Garden, we don't have a lot of the flamin' hot snacks you guys have. We don't have cherry Coke Zero unless you get it from like a Coke Freestyle machine or some bullshit. Like, but I can't get like a case of cherry Coke
I mean,
Zero.
you could
So
still order it though, right? Like you could order like
you could, but usually it costs like a ridiculous amount on Amazon and stuff like that. Like you can like find people, or they have a lot of like those candy shops that sell like American candies and sodas and stuff like that. So you can get like one can or one bottle, but it'll end up being like $3 a can or something like that. Where it's still expensive. It was like $7 American for a case of cherry Coke, but I'm like, I'm here. I have to buy a couple cases of it, and like I'll try to make it last, but I'm just chugging it like it's water. And then, grabbed a few other things. We went because the new Star Wars Villainous game came out. Nevis and I, big fans of Villainous. We have the Marvel version, we have the Disney version, and all of the expansions. And now they came out with the Star Wars version, and it came out, and it always comes out a few months before in the US than it comes out here. So we're just like, fuck it. It gives us an excuse to drive down. So I got Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee. I love Donuts cold brew. I don't know if that's like is that like someone saying they love Tim Hortons cold brew? Like, I don't know if that's like a poo poo
well,
thing in the
I think the
US. Like,
difference is that
um,
Dunkin' Donuts isn't spying on its patrons. So at least we don't
um,
know of, you know.
yeah, you're right. That Eric's referencing a class action lawsuit of Tim Hortons where they were secretly spying on people who use their app and tracking them everywhere they went. So, and they offered everyone a coffee and a donut as the settlement. So, absolutely stupid. But I got a giant fucking cold brew from Dunkin' Donuts and it was great, dude. I love Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee. Like I really do. Like whenever I'm I remember when we were in LA, I was trying to find one, but they were a little harder to find. New York, they're everywhere. Here there's one right at the border. So on the way home, I stopped and it's like at a gas station right before you cross the border back into Canada. So I just got a giant fucking iced coffee. And it was great. Olive Garden, just the worst but also great. Like and it was packed, dude. Like I texted
Yeah,
you and I'm like, it was a holiday, so there were probably quite a few Canadians going over the border that day because of the holiday.
it's a tourist site,
So you
Olive
had
Garden.
you had it is because it's right by the Canadian border, right? So that's probably the closest one. So if people do like going, they would go there. But we went at like 11:45 because we went super early to go shopping. And then so we were done around then. And then we got there and we're like, it's still really fucking busy in here. And then when we were leaving, there's like a giant line of people waiting. I'm like, I would not wait for Olive Garden, but like shout out to you guys. So I had some soup salad and breadsticks for lunch, and it was not great, but it was
That's
Olive
it. Like
Garden. So
it seems like you would have
um
more. Like that seems almost like a
I
side or
wasn't
like a
I wasn't super
yeah.
hungry, so I got like the lightest lunch you could get. Like Nevis got like a little shrimp pasta, shrimp what the fuck is it called? I don't know. Shrimp pasta with, and it came with
Shrimp
salad and
pasta.
breadsticks. Um I wasn't hungry, but I knew she was, so I was like, I'll go to Olive Garden. Like I'll tough this one out. Like I'm not really hungry, but like I'll eat some breadsticks and I'll eat some soup and I'll eat some salad. So like you can get that. It's $10 and you get unlimited soup, salad, and
And then when
breadsticks.
you went
And that's
with
a
me in
lunch.
New York, you were
Um,
sick.
so sick. I didn't eat anything. And then like I make an effort like whenever I'm in Times Square to go to Olive Garden because I think it's funny. And
Got to
then
commit to the
when
bit.
we were, and then that's what I mean when we were there. Like you got to do the dumb things you can't get in Canada. So I'm like, I'm getting a Dunkin' Donuts. I'm going to a crappy chain restaurant because that's the American way. Okay. Like that's the American way. At least how Canadians view it. So I had a good time. there. If anyone's tuning in to listen to us talk about HBO Max and stuff like that, or Batgirl, we'll get there.
I
All
mean,
right, this
there's
is
going to
how
be a
this show goes.
timeline, right? So you can just skip.
Oh, they'll be, yeah, you can skip. They can go to Timecodes and just click on what they want. But that was my
Timeline.
long weekend. There's a timeline. There is a
The Paul
timeline.
Walker
The sacred
movie.
timeline. Should we go right into, is that the biggest news of the week? Should we just go
I
right
think
into
it's what
that stuff,
everybody
or
is
what?
talking about in this moment, and it does seem to have had a ripple effect outside of film Twitter and the film and
Yeah.
television community, that it's actually kind of made quite an impact or an impression in terms of what can happen to a movie, because there are cases in the past where certain films have been shelved. The Jerry Lewis movie, specifically The Day the Clown Cried, is famously never seen the light of day. There was the Aretha Franklin doc that she stipulated that while she was living would never be shown to
Is that the one
anybody.
that played Tiff
Amazing
and then
Grace,
left?
yeah, and
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
her legal team basically blocked it from any other festival screenings, but then she passed away, and then the rights went back to the filmmaker, so they sold it to Neon, and it was released. And there was nothing. It's a great movie. It's a great documentary. But yeah, so there are,
It has happened. There's
yeah,
precedent that movies that have either been made or in the middle of making them or something like that, that they get
but not
canned.
on this
But
scale.
this is a different. So for people who don't know what we're talking about,
Oh, Fantastic Four is the other one as well. The Roger Corman
yeah,
version of Fantastic Four from I think it was like 93 or 94, because it was around the
yeah,
time that Jurassic Park was coming out, and the original VHS for Carnosaur had the trailer to Roger
for
Corman's Fantastic Four, which,
Fantastic
yeah,
Carnosaurs.
which you can watch on YouTube. But the
Okay,
movie never came out because they couldn't afford to finish it.
right. So the news here, there's a lot to go over because Warner Discovery, which is what they are now, because those two companies merged. So AT&T separated from Warner, sold the Warner part to Discovery, or just Discovery and Warner merged together. So Discovery Channel owns the Food Network and TLC and HGTV and a bunch of other stuff. National Geographic? No, that's a Disney one. What's the other nature one?
National
Channel.
Geographic. Oh no, that's
Oh.
Disney now, because
Yeah.
National.
They own some sort of the other
All I
one.
know,
The other
Matt, is it's
animal.
divided into
Animal
two.
Planet?
It's
Animal
divided
Planet,
into two
probably.
sections:
Or-
men and women.
God. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So they merged, that finally closed, and they're starting to consolidate, which happens with any merger, right? Like they lay off a bunch of people because there's redundancies in both companies. One person takes over and has a different view of how things should be run. We've seen it in Succession. I lived it. Eric still works at Rogers, so I don't know how much I can talk shit about Rogers, but like I worked at Rogers. And like it happens time and time again at these big companies. But this is interesting because HBO, one of the biggest brands on earth, I think, Warner, a movie studio that's been around forever with some huge franchises and big movies and things like that. There was news this week that they were cutting down on HBO Max content, especially on the movie side of things, but also on the television side of things. And the biggest news that came out of that was that Batgirl is no longer going to be released, which has already filmed. It's in post production now. It had some test screenings, and they just
It
decided, you
wasn't
know what,
tracking
we
well
don't
with the
want
test
to.
screenings. We should mention that. That's
Yes,
been
we should
reported.
said that. So yes, it's not so, quality aside, it's still wild. And then the other thing was Skews too, which was almost done.
How dare you bury the
Also,
lead?
just also is not coming out. So those were the two big movies that they just flat out canceled. And the news came out that they would probably, they don't know, but they think they would make more money as a tax write-off than them releasing it, which is scary and not great.
Especially for the people that
So
made these films,
yeah,
because you're basically telling them, I mean, it is a product, obviously, but at the same time, it's like, there are actors, there are filmmakers, there are people on that side, the artists, that you're basically saying your work will never see the light of day. And
yeah,
yeah, they paid them, obviously, and things like that. But part of
Sometimes these things aren't just a job to
well, they
keep
are,
you
they are, and they aren't.
entertained.
It's a job as well in
Yeah.
that it gets
I said to
but
some,
it gets
yes.
you the next job, right? Like it helps you.
Oh,
It
totally.
elevates
It's a
your
business that relies on
profile,
that,
right?
yeah.
Like, you know, Batgirl means a lot to people that it's like, oh, did you, I could put this in my reel, or did you see the last thing I worked on? And that gets you to the next gig, you know, and spending, you know, 6 months to a year working on something and then not having anything to show for it to get your next assignment or your next project. It's just like you've left a lot of people kind of grasping at straws now.
Yeah. We should say that it was supposed to be directed by Adil and Bilal, written by Christina Hodgson, who wrote Birds of Prey, as well as Bumblebee. It was going to star Leslie Grace, J.K. Simmons, Brendan Fraser, Michael Keaton was supposed to be in it. And yeah, just real shitty situation for all of them and the rest of the crew that worked on this movie. And just something on this scale, like the movie, they put in $90 million into this movie, and it's just, you know, 90 million gone, and they can probably, I don't know how much of that they get back for whatever tax write-off they do, because they didn't make any money off of it. Like Hollywood's always been weird, because there's been all those things, if you talk to people, of like movies being in the red, right? Like barely any movies make a profit on their actual like finances, because they make more money when they say they don't. Like it's like a tax thing, a weird tax thing, where because of the marketing, because of all this stuff, even with giant box offices, it's like very rare that like a movie, I might be talking out of my ass, but I remember reading this a lot, being like, it's just these weird financial things that help them with taxes and different things like that. So when you hear about, you know, and we've talked about this before, of when like, yeah, movies are an art form, but unfortunately they're an art form that relies on them making money, right? That you have to monetize them. Like it's not all movies need to make a bazillion dollars to be successful, or are all made just to make money and different things like that. There are studios that take pride in different elements, but ultimately, like, look at, I'm wearing an A24 shirt. They've learned how to like monetize art really well, and appeal to, you know, saying we still need to make money off these movies, and we'll even sell t-shirts and different shit like that
Candles.
that are way too expensive, candles, butt plugs, anything. And it's just, that's kind of the reality that we're in, where it is a business first and an art form second. So like it really, especially when you're making a studio movie, right? Like if you didn't self-finance it, if it's not a truly independent film, then you rely on these big studios to make these huge decisions, and they're thinking about money first. It's always money first, unfortunately. And like it's just an unfortunate reality that we're in, and you're seeing this with a big merger, and I think on the biggest scale we've seen it, and you hope that it's not setting a precedent for other studios or other people to go, oh shit, like
Disney's like, why didn't we
if a
do that with the
movie
New Mutants?
yeah, like exactly, like that kind of stuff, right? Where if a movie's so bad, or isn't going to make you money, you can make more money by writing it off. Like that's shit, man. Like I even, like, maybe Batgirl was gonna be terrible. Maybe it was gonna be fucking awful. Like, and maybe that's the case. Like it, because it must have been pretty bad for them to be like, we're not gonna make any money off
But
this.
have
Like
you
if we
seen
put it
the
in
rest of the
theaters, and
DCEU?
that's what I mean. That's true too, Eric. But like I just think like even seeing that first image that they released with Leslie Grace in the costume, I remember talking to you, I think, on this show, being like, that costume looked like a CW show to me. And I'm not saying like that's why it got canceled, so maybe it should have been better, kind of thing. I don't think that's the case. But if you're not going to invest properly in these things, and you're going to do this shit later, and I know they inherited it from a different regime and things like that have a different strategy about streaming movies, but it's just so all over the place at that company. And like it seems like this guy who came in from Discovery, the Zaslav guy, who had, there's multiple quotes of him talking shit about scripted content, using the word content way too much. I mean, we use it as a joke, but
Well, he's also just a
they
big fan
use it
of
as
Bo
like a,
Burnham's Inside, right? Like,
yeah. And no, those are the types of people Poe's making fun of. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like he talks about like they built their, you know, company on reality television, which is super cheap to make and makes you a ton of money for that reason. Um, and you'd hate to see that mentality be brought into, film, where maybe the profit margins aren't as high because you have to invest a lot of money in these things, but you have to invest a lot of money in these things because, like, that's where the quality is going to come from. And not necessarily, because you can make good stuff for cheap too. It just feels like that middle ground that we were like, is now left theaters because no one wants to watch that stuff in theaters. Now it doesn't seem like it even has a home on streaming at something like an HBO Max. Like, they took 6 movies off of their
Or it's
service that
very
no one was watching.
temperamental. Like
It's
it's
like,
like it could be
yeah,
there one day, but then the next it's gone. Why physical media is sometimes some worth
yeah,
investing in if it's available, right? Like, pardon me, the thing that I completely agree with you. Like, we don't know the quality of Batgirl, but I've always
I
believed,
don't think it matters at this
no, but
point.
I've
Yeah,
always believed that every movie deserves its day in
yeah,
court, meaning it deserves to be
exactly.
seen, it deserves to be reviewed, it deserves to find an audience. Let the people make that decision. And I also understand from the business point of view that it's like, okay, well, you're now also spending money on things like marketing and what have you, but cutting that cost is putting it on a streaming service. You have a streamer, you can just
Yeah,
dump it on the streamer and just let
yeah.
it have its own life there or die on the vine. But you should release it if it's completed. If, like, this is the same studio that released the Twilight Zone movie after the deaths of Vic Morrow and 2 children, and the movie still came out. David Zaslav is making a statement here coming into power, and
Yeah.
this is him basically saying, okay, well, I'm going to rewrite the script with the DCEU. And I feel like part of it is like,
Yet the Flash is
the
still
Flash is
coming
still
out.
coming out with a problematic lead, but then also that is really confusing because there was going to be a spin-off for Supergirl that's in question now.
It seems like that's not
There,
happening.
which
Yeah.
it's like, you know again, it's also like, you're taking people of color who are finally getting this
And women.
opportunity, and then you're just cutting them at at the quick. And then
And
you
then,
have even
yeah.
even the Aquaman movie where there were reports of Michael Keaton showing up in that, and now they're reshooting with
They
Ben
reshot.
Affleck
Yeah.
because it confused audiences. And there's been quotes with this guy talking about how basically he wants to kind of write a playbook that's similar to what Kevin Feige is doing and give some creative overhead or
Head. Yeah.
control.
To someone.
But it's
Yeah.
like, well, how do you do that without completely wiping the slate clean? Because you're still releasing the Aquaman movie, you're still going to be releasing the Flash supposedly, so you still have those sticking points. Obviously you can kind of get away with
Even
it.
if Flash was supposed to be a reset
Yeah,
point,
you can
but
you can get away with it with Joker 2 and Matt Reeves the Batman films
yeah.
because they're their own thing, so the continuity doesn't really matter, with that stuff. So that is something where it's like, it's going to scare a lot of artists that have worked at Warner Brothers in the past, or
Nolan left. Look at that.
yeah,
Like,
like
right. And you
Denny
think,
Villeneuve right now is shooting Dune
yeah,
2. I can't imagine what he's thinking. So, there's enough pressure making a movie and doing the best job you can, because nobody sets out to make a bad film. And even if it becomes a bad movie, it's not the intention usually of the filmmaker. But now, if anybody's working at Warner Brothers on a movie that's in production currently, there's going to be that additional stress that it shouldn't be there for those filmmakers to worry about. Denny, we didn't love Dune, but at least he had to worry about all the different departments that he was working with, and now he's got to think, okay, well, anything could happen with this movie. It probably won't. It'll probably be okay, but still,
yeah.
there is that question of like, could I be usurped by this new studio executive that is coming in with a very kind of narrow-minded business point of view, and
If it's not going to make us a ton of money or bring in subscribers, then it's not getting made,
Steven
right? Like,
Soderbergh's at home
it's
right
just
now and is
like,
just like, well, it was fun while it lasted.
yeah, there's that quote where he talks about Clint Eastwood and either The Mule or something else that he made, or No Cry Macho or something like that. And they were like, why? He was like, why did we let him make that movie? And they're like, well, he had a 5-decade long relationship with Warner Brothers. It was kind of like a one for you kind of thing. Like, we just let Clint Eastwood have a couple $1,000,000 and he makes a movie and it does whatever moderately fine, and but then he's like, why though? Like, why? It's just like one of those things that's so business minded that, like, and I get it, it is ultimately a business, to my earlier point, but when you cut out those middle movies and you don't do the one for you, one for me kind of thing, and like try to have that balance and build those relationships with people, because I think you lose trust in both your audience and the people who work for you, right? Or are making the movies for you when stuff like this happens. Like you said, even if a movie's bad, like, you got to believe in the people who make it, or just go, let's see what people think. Like, they'll, even the worst movies have its fans. That's why cult classics are a thing, and stuff like that. Like, and he talked about protecting the DC brand is the reason why he doesn't want to release Batgirl. And I'm like, fuck off, dude. You have
Have you seen
Ezra
the
Miller,
Suicide Squad?
like,
Or
yeah, I
Suicide Squad,
know.
pardon me, not
And
James
like,
Gunn's movie, but
yeah, I would have loved if you canceled that, so I never had to see it. But like, no, I'm kidding. But like, I'm glad that that exists, right? And like,
well, even the Zack Snyder cut of
it's yeah,
Justice League, like, it's like that even is something where it's like, okay, well, you know, the studio gave into the fans, and now
yeah.
that's a movie where, like, okay, well, this kind of looms over that part of the DCEU and what they've kind of failed to represent in their overall sort of you know, franchise. And like, it's just, it's so strange that this guy, like, again, like, thinking of something like even Malignant, like, if he had come into power at around that time, like the
That shit not
it,
getting made.
it would not have been released. I don't think a movie like Malignant, he wouldn't have been able to see that it was satirical, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is the
Mhm.
kind of guy that would watch
It
RoboCop and be like, I don't get it.
Yeah, he makes shit like just trash garbage TV for TLC and stuff like that because it's so cheap. He can literally take advantage of some family or something and just pay them probably a fraction of what these movies cost, and then exploit them on fucking TLC for some bullshit kind of dumbass reality show. And I'm not trying to shit on people who enjoy that kind of stuff, because it's not, you enjoy what you enjoy. There's a lot of trash that I enjoy too, but like, there needs to be a balance of everything. And just like, it just seems, it's such a weird strategy for taking over one of the most iconic, film studios, some of the most iconic franchises and different things like that. And then it's just someone who's really going like, no, we're going to do it our way. I know all this shit was in the pipeline, but like, we're kind of scrapping all that and starting fresh, sort of. But like, maybe picking and choosing just the movies done by minorities or women get canceled. And like, it's just like, what are you talking about, dude? And all the rumors of like all his like, all his head people being white dudes, and just some of the dumb shit that he said is just like, I just don't, I really don't get it. And like, how did Discovery, I don't get it. Like, of the two companies, I would have thought Warner was the bigger company, but maybe I'm wrong. But
Maybe
like, it
Discovery's
seems
more
like,
lucrative because of it being
of
so
all their
cheap,
different,
and
like, yeah,
because, like, yeah, like, and also just maybe his way of thinking as well, it's like he's applying that sort of business strategy to films, where it's like, the cheaper the better, look at like what's trending. Like,
yeah,
I retweeted, somebody tweeted about the, like, that scene in Barry where the studio execs are
yes,
talking to Sarah
the
Goldberg's, yeah, and
algorithm.
that's kind of what,
Ironically, an HBO
right,
show.
which now we have to worry about, because Barry's a show that necessarily doesn't,
No,
like,
yeah.
play by the rules. But there's been a bunch of TV shows that have also been removed that were mostly kind of one or two seasons that weren't successful. But again, I believe that any show, any movie, whether it's good or bad, quality aside, should be
If
available.
it's made, then you should
Release
put it
it.
out there.
Unless, the only time I've ever thought that the maybe it should have not have been released was the Twilight Zone movie, and it was released by Warner Brothers after the fact. So, like, or even The Crow, where something
Yeah.
truly
Something
terrible
horrible
happens.
happened, and like, yeah, and you don't know whether to continue or not. Like, that's a fair reason to maybe think about these things. But just because Batgirl might affect your brand, like, what are you talking about, dude? Even the worst superhero movies like didn't kill any of these franchises. We've gotten fucking more bad Fantastic Four movies on that I can even think of right now. It's just been 3, but like it hasn't killed that. They're still gonna make another one, and like X-Men movies, it goes up and down of fucking good and bad and awful and whatever. It's just like it just put it out there, and if Batgirl's terrible, then you fucking figure it out after. Like I don't know, you're gonna make some money. It's just the whole tax write-off thing is absolutely fucking crazy. It's just like it doesn't make any
The
sense.
perfect
And
example of this, the strategy, again, they could just release Batgirl on HBO Max and call it a day. They would have to do any
but they'll
advertising.
lose money that way. They'll make more
I
money
know,
doing it
I
this
know
way,
that,
right?
but like in terms of just like they wouldn't have to spend any more money.
Yeah.
But like you look at something even like The Empty Man. The Empty Man was one
Yeah.
of the weirdest released films through the after the Fox Disney merger, where
Yeah.
they didn't do any promotions for it. There was a press screening invite that was like the day of that it was getting released, and this was during the pandemic as well, and it was just dumped into theaters. But now it's kind of taken on a second life as a cult film, and like a lot of people, it's not a bad movie, it's just kind of a middle of the road kind of film, but there's more mystery or mystique around it now because of how it was handled. And again, like comic book movies are so popular, it's like you're gonna probably break even on something like this, but I don't know.
I don't know when you go to streaming. Like, I don't even know how that works, right? Because then they go, well, will it bring in people to the streaming service? Or they go, will it make people cancel if it's really bad?
Yeah.
Like if it's really bad, do people go, fuck, that was awful. These streaming movies are shit. Like, I'm not subscribing to this if this is the quality we're gonna get. But
But that's
then
weird thinking as well, because it's like you just like subscribed to HBO Max and then watched only one
for
thing
one,
and like
yeah,
gave
I
up.
know it doesn't make it is that kind of breadth of content. I hate that. Like I know we poke fun at that word, but that's what the word that these, and it's so funny. I've worked in, that's why when people were sharing, so the other thing that happened, they cut 70% of their development. That was a rumor for HBO Max shows and movies. So HBO originals and HBO Max originals are different because Max goes straight to streaming. They don't air on the cable channel. They have a different team, different budgets, things like that. The HBO originals are like the bigger shows that, like the Rehearsal or, Game of Thrones or the upcoming Last of Us or, things like that. So the rumor that they cut a bunch of that. So anything that was HBO Max branded, that's I think the stuff that you kind of have to be scared about, right? Like now I'm worried about Harley Quinn, like being an animated show,
And also
right? I watched
DC.
DC. Like I think I watched the first episode of the new season and loved it, and I can't wait to watch more. And like I think one of the best things DC's putting out, like quietly, like I think it is probably the best thing that they're doing right
and
now.
and
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 like
offense to Taika
um
Waititi, it truly is the gayest superhero
yes,
uh
absolutely.
co- again, content series movie, like
Yes.
compared to Thor Love and Thunder, which is
Harlivy
Harlivy.
is really is great. I love them both, and like I think that show is awesome. Like it's really really funny the way that they kind of poke fun at the DC universe and still make like compelling stories and stuff like that. Worried about that, and I don't know what other HBO Max stuff, but that was just the first one that came to my mind. But even Peacemaker, but like James Gunn has come out and said Peacemaker is safe, but like also like I don't know if James Gunn would really know. I'm sure he had a conversation with someone at high
Don't
up,
worry,
but
James, it's gonna be
um
okay. And then like there's a gun like behind his pointed to his head. It's like,
yeah,
don't
yeah.
worry.
But like I wouldn't be surprised if that just transitions to an HBO original, but like this whole thing was still confusing. And on top of that, we're Canadian, so like this doesn't affect us entirely because we don't have HBO Max. All of our HBO content is on Crave as like a section of Crave. So they came out today in their earnings call or whatever, and it's so funny seeing Twitter reactions to earnings calls because like I have lived it before of like being that person who puts together the PowerPoint presentation that your boss needs to present at the meeting or whatever. And it's, and if you worked in corporate content, which I said, like some of this shit didn't surprise me. And it's so funny seeing people like so it's the kind of ones that people were roasting them for were like a very classic PowerPoint slide that was like unique and complimentary, and they had HBO Max on one side and Discovery Plus on the other side. And then it just starts off with male skew, female skew, scripted, unscripted, lean in, lean back, appointment
Both are
viewing,
for Fat Joe.
comfort viewing. Yeah. Home of fandoms and home of genre doms. It's just like, it's so stupid, but it's so perfectly corporate America bullshit. Like the male skewing and female skewing is such like I when I worked at Show Me and worked at Rogers and things like that, like those are very normal terms where they look at it so binary like that of like ladies like this and men like this, and like that's the type of content that they like, and that's why this is a lady streaming service and this is a gentleman streaming service. And it's like and they should be roasted for this kind of shit, but this is something that some low level, someone who made the amount of money I did, of like your boss is telling you, and then you go, I don't know if the male skew and female skew is good. And then
Shut
someone
up,
high up
Jimmy.
goes, no. Yeah. It's just like, fucking, here's your bullet points, put them in a circle and make it look nice. And it's like, and it doesn't even look that good. It just looks like that classic PowerPoint bullshit. And the news out of that is that they are putting the streaming services together. I don't know what the hell it's going to be called. If HBO is just going to be like a section on Discovery Plus, if it's going to be HBO Discovery Plus or something, like I don't know what the hell it's going to be
HBO
called, but
Discover.
they are going to be put together and starting in the summer. So that was the other thing. And then the other part, which I thought was really funny, was the Global Powerhouse slide, another classic PowerPoint slide where you just put a bunch of logos and just like say, here's the things we have. So on their brands, they have HBO, Discovery, CNN, HGTV, Cartoon Network, DC, and Looney Tunes. Franchises, you have Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Shark Week, Game of Thrones, the 90-Day Fiance universe, and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And then iconic series and characters. You have Friends. What the fuck is this? I don't even know what this is. Fixer Upper, Welcome Home. The Big Bang Theory. You just got all the greats. The Property Brothers, Diners, Drive-In and Dives, and Sex in the City. What a weird group of iconic series and
This is some
characters.
corporate synergy bullshit.
Yeah, international, you have TVN, Eurosport, Discovery Kids, D-Max, don't know what the hell that is. Nove and TV Norge. Norge. Hilarious slide of the most random logos I've ever seen together. Will Guy Fieri show up in Gotham City? Maybe. Maybe the Wizarding World.
He's giving
It's
everybody
just like,
highlights, and Gotham has to stop him.
yeah,
Frosted
that's
Tips,
so
baby.
stupid.
It's just, yeah, it just reeks of like this weird conglomerate kind of basically forcing of all of these things and putting them all into one basket. You can't do that. Like, I understand that
No.
there's this ownership thing, like an umbrella, kind of like, oh, under one roof, but
Well, it's just buzzword bullshit for, their investors, right?
it's kind of gross looking too. Like, it's just like gross to think like all this is like, it is product, but you don't want to necessarily think about it that way, because it feels,
depressing.
it's depressing and soulless, and like it kind of is. In film and television, we've seen it before, where like you make fun of the suits and the corporate people who kind of see things in very kind of black and white kind of ways, and that thinking overall is kind of, yeah, it's just like it doesn't really change. Like, the business model is like, okay, how do we make money? How can we make as much money as possible? Where do we cut our losses? And
I mean, it makes me kind of scared for the HBO stuff in general, because I feel like they do throw a lot of money at their originals, at least. Like the things like the Game of Thrones, the upcoming Last of Us series, right? Was supposed to be the most expensive TV series ever made, right? Like that kind of shit goes, well, I think those are big enough that it probably won't affect them. But like it goes back to that point of they're only going to have sure bets, right? And that's kind of boring, right?
right.
Like it's really you got to take risks sometimes or make some more interesting kind of stuff, because if we just start getting the same shit over and over and over again, Like, you need some failures to learn from them or to make something interesting. And maybe there's little things you learn, or you discover a filmmaker or something like that that I just don't know. And I'm not sure if HBO or Warner and Warner Brothers was the place that you were going to do that
Well,
anyway.
HBO
But
used to
it's just
be,
like,
right? Like
yeah,
HBO, like when it kind of was starting, it had things like The Sopranos and The Wire and 6 Feet Under and Deadwood and Oz, and like it was kind of considered, like, I mean, the joke was when it kind of went into original programming, it's not TV, it's HBO. It was kind of that above.
the home box office,
Exactly.
baby.
And now, like, I mean, part of it is oversaturated, I think, with the HBO Max stuff, and kind of confusing to like
Yeah.
what is HBO versus HBO Max, and what are like
I'm fine with all that, of figuring that shit out, of going like, okay, let's just call it
yeah.
HBO. Like, we don't,
But I guess you
it
don't
just
want it
doesn't need
all
to be.
to kind of be HBO, because maybe it dilutes the brand in some way. I don't know what the thinking is there. Not that that really is bothersome, but it's
Too much
yeah.
overthinking of all that stuff too. Is like, that goes back to the Batgirl decision being so wild, where you have like a person who is literally a shitty dude. It is like literally a very problematic asshole starring in your other DC movie coming up, and you're like, that one's coming up, everything's fine on that front. And then you have Batgirl and Supergirl, and you're like, it's gonna hurt the brand. It's gonna hurt the brand. We gotta cut those. And you're like, all right. I just feel like it is absolutely wild, just the thinking. And it's like, I've seen other people tweet it too. It's like, when you bring in, and you said it earlier too, of like, when you bring in a guy who's not really a movie guy, he's just a business guy, you know what I mean? Like, or a content guy. And you start to go like, oh, Scorsese was right, and things like that. If you go back and read all those quotes from Scorsese or other people, and like, that talk about art versus, a
Commerce.
product and content, right? Like, when you start calling everything content, and unfortunately it goes back to that thing of, you need to, a movie needs to make money so you can make another movie, but then that's why people do it, and stuff like that. Um and not every movie needs to make $1 billion, but that's starting to be the
Or
mentality
it needs to be a
sometimes. It's like,
franchise, or it needs to be something
yeah,
where it's like, okay, not only do we have to recoup the cost of the budget, but we also have to think, how is this going to reflect our brand in the future, and can
yeah,
we monetize this in other ways, and how can we
yeah,
you know sell this and compete with, because the one thing I will say about where we are now, I think maybe there is too much of everything. Like, it
yeah.
does feel like, for
I'm fine with scaling back, and you hate
yeah,
people losing jobs or anything,
because
but
you just look at like how much television is coming out, and it kind of feels like
it's
you
impossible.
could never, like, if you are, being a movie fan is stressful enough, and like if you want to,
But you could keep up with most
yeah,
things, because at most you got to watch what, 2-3 movies a week if you really want to be on
yeah,
top
you
of
got to
things.
watch Ron Howard's 13 Lives. But then with television, it's like you go a week, and then you hear Apple has 4 series coming out in the next 2 months, or then
Netflix, 47 things
yeah,
dropping
or
on
or
Wednesday.
that Hulu's announced that they've got another show with Elizabeth Moss in the making, and it's like a lot of it could be good. Like, it's not that we're saying that it's
And a lot
bad,
of it is
but
great.
sometimes there's just too much of it, and it kind of
But then
falls
you
through
got
the
to think, like,
cracks, and then you get people
it's
like
not
this
all for
David,
everyone,
you
right?
know
Zaslav.
Zaslav guy coming in and being like, whoa, we gotta cut the stuff that I think won't work, and that's anything that isn't white male skewing is gotta go.
Unless you're one of those ladies over on Discovery, then you got 90 Day Fiance, and you're like, what the fuck, bro? It's just like, I don't know. It's a wild world. But yes, if a movie is completed, I understand you're halfway through shooting and you're like, this is an absolute shit show. We need to cut. We need to
Yeah, or
stop.
someone
Like, that's,
dies on set. Like,
yeah. Oh, that's a given, I think.
and
But
yet
I mean,
movies have
even
been released still.
if you start getting dailies and you're like, this is an absolute train wreck, like, we need to cut our losses here and just, we're canceling this movie, instead of like, they're literally in post production, like getting ready to finish the movie, and you're just like, you could release it, but we could make our money back if you don't.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck you, dude. Like, I just, it's just it's what I always say. They don't give a fuck about you. They give a fuck about the bottom line, and that's you as an employee or you as a customer or of someone who consumes their content. They don't fucking care as long as they make money off of you. They don't give a shit. And like that goes to every company. And like, we can all stand or like different companies. I can love the MCU, or I can go to Disney parks, or you can love A24. You can be obsessed with Stranger Things and shit like
You
that.
can
But they don't
like
give a
Zack
fuck,
Snyder's
man. Like,
Justice League.
yeah, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. It's just like, remember that these companies don't give a fuck about you other than you giving them their money.
Yeah.
Like there are, that's not, don't get me wrong. There's not people who do care at these companies. There are a lot of people at, I think, Warner, at Discovery, at Disney, at Netflix, at A24, at any of these places that do really care about the people who watch their stuff and really give a shit. The people who buy fucking Funko Pops and t-shirts and other things, and like really care about these brands. I hate even using that word, but like um at at the end of the day, they just they're here to make money off of you, and that's capitalism, baby.
Yeah.
And that's
You
unfortunately
could tell those
the world we
corporate
live
fat
in.
cats downtown that we won't take it anymore. But it is also just strange thinking that, like, Adil and Bilal
Bilal, yeah.
are, coming off of Bad Boys for Life, which was one of like the last
A
big
hit, yeah.
blockbusters before the pandemic. They directed episodes and were, creative consultants on Ms. Marvel. So it's like that alone would be enough to entice people to either, subscribe or be interested in watching this thing. And like, I feel like you would still make money off of this. But again, I don't understand the workings of the monetization when it comes to streaming. But it is a strange one, because if it was just Scoob, like, I feel like it would kind of be like people wouldn't be talking about it as much, just because it's
No,
like, okay,
but it's a big superhero movie.
yeah.
That's why, dude. Like, starring Michael fucking Keaton was supposed to be in the movie, and J.K.
Did you-
Simmons. Your Snyderverse is still
and
living.
I
Like,
can just
it's
see
just
Michael Keaton at home being, because I don't know if you read any of that
that
Variety.
quote.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, and that's why I
hilarious.
say no. That's why I usually say no.
Guess what? Wasn't gonna watch it anyway.
That's amazing. I love that
It's
man
like,
so much. But
yeah,
yeah,
I got better things
yeah,
to do. And I'm like, yeah, I don't blame him. That's a funny quote from Michael Keaton, because like I know me. I'm like, I wouldn't watch my own
yeah.
shit. Like, and I
Don't get
wouldn't
high on
like
your own supply.
I no, man. Like, I barely want to like edit my own videos because I have to hear my own voice or see my face. Where these people, it's a job. You got to think like everyone in the MCU or everyone doing a DC movie, they don't like the hilarious things in like the MCU, like interviews, people like ask them intricate questions and they're like, bro, I did this movie. I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what's happening. I just get a script and I do it. Anyways, do you think, last question before we move on, do you think we ever see this movie?
I mean, never say never, because I feel like, if New Mutants and The Empty Man were released, and a lot of people were starting
Yeah.
to speculate that those films would never see the light of day, and the New Mutants, I think, is an interesting sort of comparison, because that was coming at the time where X-Men Dark Phoenix had failed, the merger had happened, so there was talks about
MCU, yeah.
mutants and things like that. So, and the New Mutants was supposed to be the start of the next sort of phase of the non MCU series, but because of the original kind of OG franchise failing, Bryan Singer being a problematic fucking monster, and just sort of everything kind of being up in the air, but it still got released. We still saw it in theaters during the pandemic. So I don't want
Yeah.
to say that it's not going to ever, but at the same time,
Similar situation too, because didn't they want to do reshoots and they didn't want to pay for them
yeah.
and stuff
Well, they
too,
did
right?
do
And then
some
they,
reshoots,
yeah,
but they wanted more, because apparently after it was released, they saw potential in
yeah,
doing an R-rated horror film, because that's what New Mutants
yeah,
was trying to do. It was kind of their Doctor Strange movie, where it was skewering more into the supernatural horror sort of side of things. But yeah, it's just one of those situations where, like, it probably won't be anytime soon. and it's going to be really confused. Like the whole DCEU thing is just.
Do you think they're backtracking on the Michael Keaton thing now too? Like,
Yeah,
do you think like
I do,
remember?
because he was supposed to
I
be
don't
Nick
think he's.
Fury, right?
Yeah,
And
I don't
I
think.
think if the Flash does get released, because even that seems up in the air. I think the Flash, Shazam. I don't think Shazam's coming out in December. I have no idea what the fuck is going to happen now with Black Adam, which is like that was the whole other thing as well. Because
But the hierarchy of the DC universe is about to change, which we've
Right.
just seen. It was David Zaslav's.
right, because The Rock was talking about that at Comic-Con. But like even that was interesting because The Rock, who is a very business-minded guy as well,
Yeah, he's a company
but
man,
he was talking about how that this movie was going to change the hierarchy, as you made the joke, which is very funny. David Zaslav is Black Adam. But you look at that and it's like, okay, well, these movies, Shazam and I don't think Wonder Woman 3 is happening now. We're all going to still have the connective tissue to the Snyderverse and a previous regime that greenlit all these things, and even the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. It's just like we're probably not getting the Viola Davis series now, the Amanda Waller
No.
thing. So it's like
I think you get those movies and then it just finishes this era and then they go on and reboot.
Those will be the
everything,
New
like,
Mutant films where it's like we'll just release
Yeah.
those. They'll do better than New Mutants. Like I still think people will.
If Black Adam doesn't have a connection to anything, then maybe they can. I don't know, but it's supposed to.
Yeah,
Right?
unless
Like,
they re-edit it before. I mean, they even said that they just finished the film, so I mean, who knows now? Where it's like, do they delay it and then do reshoots? I mean, the Flash stuff is still like completely up in the air, and what they're doing. You know, talking about Michael Keaton being the Nick Fury of the DCEU moving forward, bringing Ben Affleck back again, who's probably just like, guys, I want to just leave me alone.
I just got married again. I just want to chill with J Lo. Like, I don't.
It's so
like,
fucked up.
But he always comes back. They're just like, hey, we'll put a Dunkin' Donuts on set, and then he goes, I'm in.
We'll name a
I'm
Dunkin'
fucking
Donuts
there.
after you in Boston.
Exactly.
And it's just like done.
Yeah.
But I think what will be really fascinating in maybe 10, 20 years from now is reading the behind the scenes of this, because I find this way more interesting and extremely convoluted than my interest in the DCEU movies in general, because I feel
Or
like
even the Snyder Cut stuff. Or
yeah,
anything
and
like
just
that,
like with the rushing to compete with the MCU, with getting the Justice League movie out before really kind of establishing the majority of the characters. It's been a very fascinating kind of ride, I guess, you know, with the DCEU. And
Isn't J.J. Abrams supposed to make a Superman movie too?
there was supposed to be an African American Superman as well. There's something else that they were doing.
I wouldn't be surprised if JJ's that guy they try to lure to be the DC dude, but like the Kevin Feige of that.
But then again, it's like,
I don't know.
like, do you start from the beginning again? And if you do the beginning again, like, what are you going to do?
Well, especially with like you said, Matt Reeves, and they just announced like weird timing on the Joker, come see, come saw movie or whatever. Like it's just,
La
like,
Bibliothèque.
like weird timing. Be like canceled Batgirl, but guys, you know what you want? Joker 2.
White male rage,
like,
guys.
Yeah, it's just like it's gonna be a musical. It's like, oh, okay.
But they'll release that though, because again, like it's not connected.
It was successful and it was cheaper.
Yes,
cheaper.
Yeah.
So like that's the type of movie they want. They're like, oh, okay, that only costs less than $100 million and will make us $1 billion. Yeah, go do that. And even Matt Reeves, the Batman, which are going to be giant budgets, more of like a sure thing, I guess. Right?
But even now, could, I mean, like, what's going on with like the Colin Farrell Penguin show? You know, like
no chance that HBO Max
or the Arkham Asylum
Arkham series. Yeah, not a chance.
And Batman is one of like Warner Brothers' most lucrative, franchises and characters. It's like you always make money on Batman, to the point where like, the CW and anything that's trying to use a live action version for television has been told not to, as a mandate, and
they had a Batman in this movie and they still like,
and one that a lot of people, I think in our age group and older, and people that are in their late 30s, early 40s, were excited to see Keaton come back. So now it almost feels like The Flash is another movie where it could literally disappear, you know, like, and again, I think I don't know how you get around that. I think you need to like literally reshoot that entire movie or rewrite that
The
film. Yeah,
Flash, yeah.
because as
I don't know how you
Miller's
do it
stuff, it's
either.
just like, how can you
It's
avoid that?
awful. Everything you read is
It
like
gets
gets worse and worse. It's like
it's like after you
everything. They're like
finish,
he's got a cult. He's got a cult now, and he's like luring
he's
children
grooming
in, and you're
people.
just
It's
like,
just like
it's awful. Like we're laughing, but it's
he's being
horrible. Like it's
arrested in
really,
Hawaii multiple times.
yeah.
It's just like you read it,
It's
it's like, oh, it can't get any worse, and then it's like, nope, it does.
no. I'm gonna be like he murdered someone next week or something like that, and I don't know how you get around that, and if you go that doesn't hurt our brand, but Batgirl does. Anyways, I do think we see that movie
I
eventually.
think we'll be talking about this a
Um
lot more because it still feels
yeah.
like we're very much in the dark when it comes to what is going
What's
on
the
and what
plans
will
are, yeah.
be canceled and what will go forward, and I still think that
Yeah.
a lot of that is going to be revealed in the coming days. And I think you mentioned, I mean, you tweeted it to me, like the timing of the Joker 2 announcement is very strategic in that it's almost like, you know, don't look over here at this, you know, dumpster fire, look at this, we've got this coming, you know, you
But I
like
also feel
this.
like the reception, I know we're in our bubble where our bubble is a little bit more critical of Joker than I think what the regular public views of Joker, but like and I'd like the movie. I think I just don't like Todd Phillips that much, but
Who's
like
definitely like
and
hanging out with David Zaslav.
Zaslav, yeah, just fucking snorting cocaine off of some. I don't know. I don't want to get sued, so I'll stop. I just it's wild, but I do think that we see Batgirl eventually. But I think it will be a long time, and I think it'll be one of those things where like the DC's in a completely different spot, and then it's like, well, this doesn't hurt us anymore. But I don't know how that works with the tax thing,
Yeah.
right? Like if you already took the tax write off, like how does that work, right? Like I don't, maybe they really have to like be like, nope, this can never see the light of day because of
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
And
Green Lantern was supposed to have a TV series.
yeah,
Black Canary with Journey Smollett was supposed to have a spin-off with there was
none of that
rumors that
shit's
Austin
happening. Yeah.
Butler was going to play Green Arrow. There was something else as well. Oh, we're never Margot Robbie's just probably like, I'm done now playing Harley
Yeah, she
Quinn.
had a good run.
But
Yeah,
it
Birds
kind
of
of like
Prey,
it
like
really shit on her so much as well,
yeah.
because it's like she wanted to continue the character and the storylines, and like, you know, the first Suicide Squad movie is terrible. You know, Birds of Prey and James Gunn's Suicide Squad kind of helped out a little bit, and she, after all of that, still wanted to play the character, still loves the character, and now it's like,
Well, are they gonna do a Suicide Squad the threequel? Like, is it
are
like,
they?
or I don't know, man. Like, it's who the fuck knows? But we've I thought DC was actually weirdly in a better spot because they were just starting to go, just do whatever the fuck you want. Who
Yeah.
cares? Like, and I actually appreciated that. But now when now they're reverting back to being like, let's just do what Disney did. Like, let's just do that again. It's just like, oh, isn't that what you guys tried and failed at doing? And now you're gonna try that again. Like, why not just focus on making good movies? And I guess that is the plan. But um, and then
But
maybe
where do you
again, Batgirl
restart?
wasn't
Like,
that,
that's
but
the weird
I don't
thing.
know.
Like, do you literally like, you know, cut all your losses after? Do you release the Flash, Shazam, and Aquaman and say that's it, and don't
And
continue with,
then
you know, Wonder Woman
figure it out.
3 and all that stuff, and then like,
But people expect this shared universe stuff now, right? Because Marvel set a precedent for it where if you don't do it, then they feel like you're missing out on something if these characters don't interact or team up or there's Easter eggs and all this shit, where I feel like that's actually hurting a lot of this stuff because like not everyone is Marvel, and people made good points of like Marvel was in a very different spot when they started all that stuff, and like they didn't have their top tier characters, and like there was no pressure to make those movies all connect and make a bazillion dollars and stuff like that when they were at Paramount, and Marvel started, like Marvel almost went bankrupt, guys.
well, they
Remember that
did.
shit.
I
And
mean,
like
I mean,
yeah,
in
like
the 80s and early 90s, they were selling off their characters to
everything.
make, you
Yeah.
know, the Albert Pune Captain America movie that was never actually released theatrically in the the US. It was released in places like Italy, and now has a
Yeah.
Blu-ray release that you can go and watch it, or the Dolph Lundgren version of The Punisher, which has this weird history where they sold the rights of the character name, but the skull logo they didn't. So Dolph Lundgren's
Yeah.
character, Frank Castle, doesn't have the skull logo. So,
He wears a giraffe.
but that was at a
t-shirt.
time when comic books, I mean, like Batman 89 kind of brought it all back, or kind of had that resurgence. But before that, Superman 4 nearly killed it. And then in the 90s, you
Mhm.
had, you know, Dick Tracy and Spawn and stuff like that. But then once you got to Batman and Robin, it nearly killed it again. And then the movies that kind of brought it back were, you know, a lot of people reference
Spider-Man,
Spider-Man and X-Men,
X-Men.
but Blade is the other one that,
Yeah,
you know, was
Blade.
made for next to nothing and did really, really well.
Again, but all of those their own
Yeah.
thing, right? But then the success of the MCU, and I love it. I just don't think everything needs to be that,
Except
right?
the
Like,
90
and I
Day
guess
Fiance
universe, yeah.
We need to
I
have a
want to know
shit.
what the fuck that even means. What does that mean? I don't know.
Do you want to know
Like,
what that means? Do you really
I
want to know?
not really, but like I'm like they have that many shows, I guess, like that. In 90 Day Fiance, what is even the concept? Like, are you date someone for 90 days and then you're their fiance, or like
Or are you the
you got
fiance for the 90 days as like a test run, and see if like you want to get married by the end of the 90
end of the
days
30
and
days?
then
Like, I literally have no idea what this show is about.
I don't
Like,
either, and I don't care, and I hate that I know as much as I do because of this. Like, this is probably
yeah,
even worse than the Batgirl stuff. Like this is truly like, okay, why? How do I know about this? When, yeah, it's a reality show, but it's not really a shared universe. It's just life, you know, and like that's
right.
it. It's just, yeah. We'll be talking about this probably
And
for
we spent almost an hour doing it, so I'm sure we'll be talking about it more. But
months, years to
um,
come. So
I don't doubt it. Where do you want to move on to next? Do you want to do TIFF talk? Should I talk about Harry Potter? Should we talk about the rehearsal? Should we talk about Dragon Ball? Should we talk about what else
what are you
have we
feeling,
watched
man?
that
What are you
you want to?
feeling?
RRR? Like,
Yeah.
fuck, like I watched RRR. Let's talk about that. We got so much to talk about, guys. This episode's either going to be really long or we'll have to save some for another episode. But Eric, my life has been changed. You brought up RRR a few weeks ago. I think it was only 1 or 2 weeks ago now, or a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago.
When did I?
When I got back from my trip,
Yes.
right? You watched it like right after.
Or I watched it when you
Um,
were away, I think maybe,
yeah.
and yeah, it
Um,
was incredible. It lives up to
I was
the hype.
I was putting it off, and because the 3 hour runtime, as I do. Um, but it was a nice Friday night, last Friday. Nevis and I were, finished work, not sure what we were gonna do this weekend. And I was like, Nevis, I have an idea. Did I pay for 3 months of subscription to a streaming service called Z5 so I could watch RRR in
Yep.
Telugu, right? Is that how
Yep.
Telugu? In 4K, Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision. Um, I did. So that cost me $30 and it was well worth it because we put on the original language version because I kind of wanted to watch that. There's the Hindi version, which is on Netflix, which is dubbed by the actors in the film. But it is dubbed. I wanted to watch the original version, which a lot of it is dubbed because of the musical numbers and different things like that too. But or just ADR or the musical track is put in. Um, Eric, you didn't hype it enough because it is so fucking good,
Yep.
dude. Nevis and I were flabbergasted, and I heard good things, but I was not prepared for what I was about to watch. Like I saw a little, like I never watched a full trailer, but I saw some of the silly stuff of like some guy tackling a tiger or whatever, a lion.
But it's all out of
And like
context, right?
yes, and I'm like, oh, okay, this movie's gonna be, like over the
Very
top, but like
stylized.
I didn't know what it was about or anything.
Yeah.
I get into this movie and you get the prologue and then the 2 intro chapters, and by the time that RRR title hits, I am all in, dude. I was like, this is incredible already. Like, the intro to both of those characters is fucking wild.
Did we just
and
become
it just
friends?
doesn't let go. Yeah. And it's just like when they lock arms and then it turns into the logo and then you have the music and I'm like, this is the greatest movie ever made. And I've just seen the title of it. And that's like 40 minutes into the movie too. Love that. The title card 40 minutes in. But like it was way more intense than I thought. It was way funnier than I thought. It was way more exciting than I thought. It was way more creative than I thought. The musical numbers are unbelievable. The action is so much fucking fun. The bromance between those two guys is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. And just like I said, the action sequences are some of the most creative and wild things I have
The
ever
double-decker
witnessed on
man.
screen.
Oh,
Like
so
I
good.
just the double decker man is incredible. The intro to is it Ram's
Yeah, yeah.
character?
When he's working for the British Empire and like it's like
Yeah, and
one
he has
versus
to go get that
everybody.
guy. And that is dude. That is when that moment, because that opening is still pretty intense
Yeah.
when they steal the girl and everything. And like I was like, oh fuck,
From
like
Beam's Village.
um yeah. Yes, exactly. From Beam's Village. And I'm like, oh fuck. Like Nevis had to close her eyes and she's like, is this gonna be like really violent and gross? And I'm like, I don't think so, but like I don't know what we're getting into. But it is one of those movies that balances tone so well and is absurd, but then very intense and heartwarming, and one of the best friendship movies I've ever seen. But then like also is like it's historical fiction, of
Well,
course,
because
but
the two
like even
characters are real
yeah.
um political figures within India, but yes, they never met. And it's kind of like the whole film is like, what if, you know?
Yes, and just how that goes down and their journey, and just that you know where it's going for them, or you don't, but you do. Like the main plot, you kind of know where it's going, but like you'll never guess what happens in
Or
between,
how it's done. The
and how
execution
it's
is
done
incredible.
is so
The
creative. Yeah,
direction in this movie, like again, you know,
I'm getting another beer.
awards
Keep
are
talking.
silly, but I feel like, you know, this film probably should win Best Picture and directing and all of that. And it kind of goes to show you, like, even though this is one of the highest budgeted Hollywood movies ever made, it still is so
Low
creative.
budget compared to
Yeah, like I mean, I'm being a little bit provocative here, and I even mentioned this when I talked about it before, but it blows Marvel out of the water in terms of how it uses its VFX and how it stages action sequences and plays
I
with
agree.
character and dialogue and just camaraderie, but also it's never afraid to kind of take it to 11 but do it in a way that's also just extremely inventive and exhilarating, and you kind of feel the length of it, but then also it just flies by, and it's kind of
It
it's
does.
that
Yeah, I could have
max
watched 2 more hours,
it's that
3 more hours.
maximalist kind of entertainment that we
Yeah,
got with
which is why I love
everything
everything
every
everywhere
yeah
as well.
and it's like one of those movies where like you are watching, like, I'm sure, you know, the experience of watching it at home where you did, Matt, I know you care about, you know, sound and the screen and
It
picture,
sounded amazing, dude, in Dolby
but
Atmos.
it's one
But
of those things
anyways,
when you're watching it, you're just kind of like, man, if I
I
saw
wish I
this at the
saw this in the theater.
Cinesphere,
Yeah,
holy fuck.
they gotta do it, dude. They played IMAX. I will fight them. I will go.
You'll
Like
take a
we got a
flaming
critics.
motorcycle to the face to those guys.
We got a Critics' Choice email today that was like, want to host screenings in your town, or like a Critics' Choice screening thing? And I was gonna message you. I'm like, we might not be the right people for this.
No.
I know Peter already did it, but I was like, I want to do that at Cinesphere, and even if that takes me just using our connections to get that to play there, but it's got to. They're gonna program it
Yeah.
eventually. Like they will.
SS
And yeah,
Rajamouli has made
is
one of the
yeah.
definitive action movies ever. It reminded me of the first time I talked about this recently, seeing John Woo's Hard Boiled, you know, and like
Yeah.
just completely being not only immersed in the story, but just I didn't think I would ever be surprised again by an action scene. There's a lot of great action in movies. There's, you know, Mad Max Fury Road. I know you're not the biggest fan, but like there's moments in that film that are
It's
amazing.
very
Top Gun
inventive
Maverick
and yeah.
more recently, but watching this,
And I will defend the Marvel movies a little bit. I agree with you that this is leaps and bounds more entertaining and better and more creative, and Marvel does take the safe route. But like there's even fun things in that. But this just is on another. It's on its own stratosphere.
yeah, and Ram Charan is a fucking movie star. That mustache,
Yeah.
as soon as you see
It's
him the first
beautiful.
time, it's like I'd never seen him in anything before, but it was just like I like
Nevis fell in love with him
this
right
guy
away.
is fucking
this.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like this guy's an Adonis, and you're just
Yeah.
watching it and you're just like the film is so clever with how it uses VFX, and it never looks real, but there are
No,
moments where
it's
you
a great point.
literally your jaw drops. There's a moment when this animal kingdom is literally unleashed upon the British Raja,
Oh my god, it's so
there's
good.
one moment where I said, "Holy fuck!" and it involves
Oh,
the impaling of a British soldier's arm
oh
on
yeah,
a
yeah.
deer, and you're just like,
Yeah. Nevis was really grossed out by
it's
that.
a. I was too,
But
and I didn't think I could be
yeah,
by CGI. Like it's
I
just
know.
like
And that's the
incredible.
thing. Like the CG in the movie is, you can tell that they don't have a $200 million budget. But then again, Marvel at times you can't tell that they have a $200 budget when it comes to their special effects. Um Not shitting on the VFX people, shitting on the timelines and all that kind of stuff. But to your point with comparing it to Marvel and stuff like that, I thought of the same thing. And this is coming from someone I absolutely love 90% of the MCU. And the special effects don't really bother me in those movies that much either. But it showed me that in Marvel, it does stick out like a sore thumb sometimes. In this, it didn't because of the creativity and how it's used and the story put behind it and the characters and the charisma people put out. That like it shows you that special effects aren't the be all end all. You don't need a photo real lion or a photo real deer or anything like that. It's just the creativity you use that will make you forget about it not looking great when it comes to the CG. And then that's how computer generated fucking imagery should be. It's not like this has to look real or it's going to take me out of the movie. No, if the movie's good, it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't look like dog shit. It's just like if it looks good enough and how you use it, then that's what you do. This movie was made for $75 million,
Which
which
is
is or
it's
72
crazy.
2
It's
million.
crazy because it looks like it was
It's
made for more because of how
because they shot on location and they still used a lot of CG, but
and
like
real
again,
extras and
yeah, that's what I mean. There's these elaborate sequences with hundreds of people and things like that, and that's the shit you just like. It's old school kind of filmmaking. It's because they don't have all the like trinkets and things. Like they do have access to obviously amazing sets and production design and all this kind of stuff, but they just don't rely on green screen and CG like at least in this movie that they do in like a Marvel movie or some other big budget movie you would get here. And I was just completely floored by it. And it's just like when you think an action sequence is amazing, then they break out into one of the best fucking dance and song sequences you've ever seen in your life, and it just completely works. And it's just like you don't question it at all. You believe this world, or you believe this kind of blending of genre, action, musical, comedy, drama. Like it's in
melodrama. At
that.
times it even
Yeah.
reminds you of like it is comical in the bromance. Like
Oh,
there's
totally.
there's a moment in
That whole song about them being friends and they're running around like skipping together and like doing other things, like
let
it's
me tell you
amazing.
about my best
And if
friend.
you read the lyrics, because they're translated very directly, it's just it adds kind of to
But I
that.
even
But
thought of Point Break, where like there's this
oh
reveal of
yeah,
like when they find out who they are to each other,
it is very Point
and it
Break.
kind of
Yeah,
has like you're waiting for like one of them to become Johnny Utah and like shoot up in the
yeah,
air and be like no, or
no,
like
that's
the
kind of
friendship after that amazing dance number where it's like a best friend is there for you, but a true friend will let you piggyback off of him.
yeah, it's great, dude. And like, so I don't want to like spend too much time on it because I feel like I don't want to give away. We haven't really given away anything because this is a movie that you could describe to people, and like I tried to describe it to my
It's already
parents
been
because I was just
memeified, I
like,
think, so much that
yeah,
you probably have come across it in some capacity by this point if you have
yeah.
any kind of social media presence or online sort of
But out of
awareness.
context, it
Yeah.
just you won't really. It's not the same. Like you gotta experience this thing. If somewhere is playing it in a theater near you, go do that. If not, it is on Netflix in Hindi. It is on this Z5 streaming service that I found. So ZEEE5. Um, and you can subscribe there. They do make you give 3 months of subscription because they probably just like you have to prepay for 3 months.
But that's
It
basically
is
like
worth it.
buying two tickets to the film
It's worth
anyways
it.
if
It
you're
was 30
yeah.
bucks. It was $30, and Nevis and I watch, and she'll maybe watch some other stuff on there, but I it is I would have paid $100 for this movie. Like, it is that good. And like, I hope it gets like a 4K release or something,
Yeah, I
or
don't
like
even know if there's any
um
plans for any kind of physical media.
Criterion,
Oh,
get on
they
it.
should. I mean, it is worthy of that. Yeah, it's just it's one of those movies again, like it kind of it's word of mouth because the first time I heard
Yeah.
about it was back in April, when the hosts of the important cinema club podcast, Will Sloan and Justin DeClue, talked about it, that it was playing in one theater in Etobicoke, and then in the US it started to kind of cross over and started making money, and then like it was number 4 in the box office, in the North American box office. So it's like, okay, there's something going on here with this film, and then you watch it and you're kind of like, I get it. I
Oh, I get it.
totally
Yeah.
get it.
If you're not in by, the second sequence in the movie, then there's something wrong with
Yeah.
you. Like, there's like, I don't get away from, oh, I have to read subtitles or anything like that. Like, just grow up, you baby, and watch this fucking movie. I'm going to tell my parents to watch it. They watched Everything Everywhere All at Once the other night, and my dad was like, interesting movie. And like, where my mom was like, I really liked it. My dad's like, weird, very weird. And I was like, I'm just glad you guys watched it. That's all that matters to me. Like, I'm glad you gave it a shot. So this is the next one where if they're asking me what to watch, I'm like, please, for the love of God, just watch RRR. They can watch the Hindi version. Like, I don't need to be like, find this random streaming service and go do that. It's like, no, just watch that. If that's the only way you can, just watch it any way you can. And I know Netflix is working on, I cannot wait for them to put out an English dub of this movie, because then they plan to,
God.
because I just
Jesus.
I can't fathom what that will be like. Like, I wonder if they'll get, Ram Charan and the two leads to do, it was his name, NT Rama Rao
Yeah.
Jr. Okay. I don't know if they both speak fluent English. They do speak English throughout the movie, but at times, and I'm sure they do, but, um, it would be interesting if they dubbed their own stuff in English, but
And I love the cartoonish
I
villainy of the white British people. It is
oh my god,
hilarious.
they're hilarious. They're all like just mustache twirling, like over
Like
the
Ray
top.
Stevenson,
Like,
who played the
it's
Punisher and
just
who's
like,
on Rome and HBO, is sort of the main
yeah,
baddie, and then Allison Duty, who is in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Like it's
yes,
amazing
yeah,
how over the
yeah.
top they are.
They're so over the top. Ray Stevenson. Okay, yeah, of course that. I didn't
Punisher
even like
Warzone,
clue
man.
in. I know. And like, I was like, why? I didn't even clue in while I'm watching that was Ray Stevenson, but that's incredible. Um yeah, what a film. Go see it in IMAX if you can. I want it to play the Cinesphere so bad, man. So bad. I would have it was one of those movies that I haven't stopped thinking about it since I watched it, and I almost thought about watching it again the next
Yeah.
night. Like,
Same.
that's how, and it's 3 hours long. And I'm like, I could watch that shit again. Like, it's one of those movies where if someone hasn't heard of it or hasn't watched it and they're over at your place, and you're like, "Do you have 3 hours? Because I'll put it on right
Yeah.
now." And we'll watch it
Or if you
together,
live near a
because it's
movie
just like,
theater, or like
yeah,
it's like
that's
it's
playing
like
it or
it's
something.
playing in 30 minutes. Let's get over there.
Yeah, like, that's absolutely what this movie is. And um we'll see where it ends up at the end of the year, but right now it's fucking flip-flopping in my head with this movie right here, which we can transition to that news, I guess,
Yeah, because the
quickly
Daniels
before
have
we go
become
into other
corporate
stuff.
boys.
They're not at Warner Brothers
No.
though. So moving on from RRR, yeah, the other big news coming out of, this week, or there's a bunch of stuff,
This is
but the
more positive
Daniels,
on the sort of corporate side of things, I guess.
yeah, the Daniels signed a 5-year pact with Universal, for a first look deal, with their production partner as well, I believe. So good for them, man. I'm just glad they're getting banked. Like, they earned it after a couple really, really great movies, and especially after Everything Everywhere All at Once. Which, again, with RRR in that movie, like, I think I said on our review, like, if we get a movie that is better than Everything Everywhere All at Once this year, we're in a like, couldn't even believe that happening. And I think RRR is that at that point where they're like neck and neck for me, but like, it's an unbelievable year. But anyways, Daniel's at Universal. What do you feel about this? Like, I think Universal's been making some good moves. You know, they have Jordan
Well,
Peele.
that's
They
the
picked up
same deal, right?
Nolan,
Like
and
it's a
yeah,
first look deal that I think is supposed to be like 5 years. It's kind of
yeah.
similar to what Peel set up with Nope and Us after Get Out, and so it seems like Universal at this moment is becoming the new Warner Brothers, where Warner Brothers
The new filmmaker friendly,
was a
like
filmmaker friendly studio, and Universal kind of was known for the fast films mostly, and now they're kind of coming back with, okay, let's bring in the, the Nolans, the Peels, the Paul Thomas Andersons, the popular auteur guys. So the Daniels kind of being christened in that way.
isn't Anderson going back at Focus too?
Yeah, which I
Yeah,
mean, that's a whole interesting thing to talk about with the whole Bill Murray stuff on that
yeah.
side of things. But with the Daniels, like, it kind of shows you that it's like, there's an interest in taking a risk on guys that aren't going to make conventional movies, because if you've seen Swiss Army Man or Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yeah.
that like
They're not making Fast and
they're
Furious
yeah,
11.
yeah,
No.
David Zaslav is like
So we say his name differently every time.
pissing himself watching those movies. He's
Yeah.
like, I would never let anybody make those films. And so with that, like, it's just fascinating to see, like, okay, look what they did with essentially two shoestring budgets. Like, what can they do with more time and a little bit more
Yeah.
money? And if they even need that, like,
If they get Jordan Peele money, like close to 100
we're
million,
hiring
make
Hoyt Van
something, right?
Hoytema to shoot our next film in
Dude,
IMAX.
I could see it happening. Those are the things that, something like this gets you,
Yeah.
right? Like I really like, I love A24 obviously, and like they do too. They even thanked them. I think Daniel Kwan even thanked them in his little write up when he came back on social, where obviously they owe a lot to them doing the first two movies with them. But I you got to be happy for them. Like A24 does give you freedom and lets you make weird movies and shit like that. But like, yeah, Universal, they'll get, a ton of money probably and a ton of money to make movies too. So, um, I don't know what was Nope's budget.
I think
I'm
Nope was like
curious.
in
It
the
was like
60s or 50s. Like, it was,
68
yeah.
million. So yeah.
So that's a lot, but it's
Um,
not. Like, it's like, that's still like, weirdly, in this day and age, a sliver of what a superhero budget would be. And for a horror film, it's unheard of, because usually genre
yeah.
movies, specifically horror films, are
Or
are
cheap, yeah.
made for, the Blumhouse kind of dollars, the 5
But they
to
made Everything
20
Everywhere for
million. Yeah.
25. So you got to think 3 times that budget now, maybe if they get a Jordan Peele Note budget, which is I think what Universal would probably give them,
Yeah.
right? Like 75 million, 60 to 70 million kind of area, and I'm just like can't wait to see what the hell that would be.
Yeah, they're not going to
Like,
get the Russo brothers Gray Man budget, even though I'm sure the Russo brothers
yeah.
will probably be like, we need to ride on your coattails for as long as possible now, because again, like, I think a lot of people are going to be talking about Everything Everywhere All at once more once the awards season begins, and I feel like that's also going to add even more anticipation for whatever they do next. Like, it's going to be one of those things where it's like, you know, obviously there's a lot of people that were interested in them with those first two films, but now it's like, okay, whatever they do, like, they're going to make something. Like, it's just, even with someone like Robert Eggers, like, you look at like him
Yeah.
starting at A24, The Witch being picked up by that company, and then him making The Lighthouse, in studio for them. And then, whether or not you like The Northman, that's to be debated, but you look at what he did with a bigger budget and more sort of, cast and locations and things like that. And so it's like, okay, well, at least we'll get something that is truly unique, hopefully,
Yeah.
from
And that
those
was
guys.
70 to 90 million.
Yeah.
So, and that was at Focus, but still Universal, right? Internationally and stuff like that. So, yeah, that seems to be like what they'll probably get for their next movie, which is very, very exciting and good for them. They are, shot to the top of my, like, anything they do is my most anticipated thing. Like, I cannot wait to see what they do. I doubt they jump into franchise territory.
No.
I made a joke about Jurassic Park, and even Daniel Kwan made a joke about Fast and Furious in his tweet, where he's like, "Is it too fast and too furious or whatever?" And I'm like, I can only imagine what their Fast and Furious movie would be like.
Well,
But
Vin would never allow it.
No. If they reboot the franchise and they're like, you guys can do whatever you want, Universal multiverse movie. I hope they don't get stuck into like multiverse stuff
No, I
either.
hope they
Like, I
do
hope they just let them
their own
like
thing.
their whatever they want, right? Um, very, very cool. Where do you want to go next? There was some other stuff this week too. I'm blanking now, but
Well, we got some
I
TIFF
know we got to do
announcements,
TIFF
and
talk.
then
Yeah, we
we've been
can do
watching
that.
the
I did
rehearsal.
see. Yeah, let's talk about the rehearsal a little bit because you've caught
Oh
up with the
yeah,
newest episode, which was a two-parter, but now it just looks like the series is going to be like an ongoing kind of thing. How'd you feel about the second episode? You still all in
I
or
am
what?
completely in. I am also hating myself. It's like this weird self-loathing, awkward, uncomfortable, very funny show
Yeah.
with some very strange kind of like memorable reference points in terms of how the show is edited. Like I loved the sequence where one of the subjects characters, I don't know how you want to or what you want to call them, but Angela, who her kind of rehearsal is that she kind of wants to experience what it would be like to be a mother, and so you have this kind of hereditary-esque dollhouse kind of created in the middle of nowhere to kind of do a rehearsal, and sort of the idea or the pitch is that she's looking for a co-parent to kind of help her along the way, so she goes out on a series of Tinder dates, and one of the best edits is this one guy who she asks, like, what are the things that scare you, and it's like, well, first of all, eels, and then it cuts, and the way that is, it's so perfect, and it's what I appreciate the most about this show is I thought I had it pretty much figured out by the end of the first episode of what the format would be, but it keeps
Yeah.
evolving. And part of it
Yeah.
does feel like it is giving into Nathan Fielder's own psychosis, where it's almost like this like Trojan horse kind of show where it's almost like
Yeah.
you think the show is going to be about me helping other
The other
people,
people
but it's
and the, yeah.
actually me working on myself. This is my
Yeah.
own version of therapy that costs, the this
Not even, yeah, or just kind of poking fun at
yeah.
himself too, right? And those anxieties and
I thought
different
about
things
you
and just
with
like
the one of the
yeah,
characters or one of the people that on the last episode who was watching Dragon Ball Z with his
oh yeah.
ailing
Yeah.
grandfather who also says some
Yeah.
really anti-Semitic things at one point.
Oh my god, yeah.
And again, like you can tell that
And even those moments he comes over and you know that Nathan's trying to be
well, he's
like,
Jewish too, and it's like
yeah, I know. That's why it's just how he handles those conversations. I'm always like fascinated, and he gets them to say exactly what he wants them
yeah,
to,
or
right?
his
And
love of
like,
the Punisher.
yeah, of course. Another great episode, and I'm totally with you that the series keeps morphing into something darker and weirder and but still
Unpredictable.
includes like unpredictable, like just like RRR, where it's just like I can't tell you where I think this show is going because I have no idea. But it's consistently really funny, really awkward at
So
times.
cringy.
Yeah, the most cringe at times, but like, and I still go back and forth of going like, man, is this all like, is this him setting this all up to like, and I guess I go back to it doesn't really matter. And I sometimes you go, the people are too unbelievable to be actors sometimes where you're like, no, this is a real person. Cause like, it's
But
just
then the
the way
actors
that this
playing
person,
real people, like the
yeah,
grandfather in that one scene,
yeah,
is
yeah,
incredible and weird. But it's also weirdly moving. I don't know again like how much of it is real or not. But there is a moment in that third episode with kind of the main subject having a moment of catharsis in a
yeah.
way that is very moving. That I was kind
Oh
of
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh wow, this is like like, even though we've judged this character on some questionable things he has said, he's still a
And that's
human
why you
being,
don't,
right?
yeah.
So
And you don't feel bad that they're manipulating him in a way of like, because I was talking about this with Nevis of going like, part of the bit is the meta layers of things of like, okay, they bring this guy in to do the rehearsal. We're going to give him a situation now that is exactly the same as the rehearsal he's
yeah,
practicing, but he's supposed to think that it's real life. And then Nevis goes, well, wouldn't he realize that it's the same thing? And I go, well, it's the meta layer of the joke of you're kind of poking fun at the guy because he's not realizing that the same situation is being presented to him and he buys into it and believes it. Like, that's, we as the audience know what's happening, so we laugh that he doesn't realize, and we feel okay about that because of certain things like the anti-Semitic things that he's saying and like other things like that. But then you do feel bad for the people at times, and then he has a heartfelt moment. And that's what I said about that first episode, where the show does this weird balancing act where, and there's all the conversation right now on Twitter and shit like that of like if what Nathan Fielder's doing is okay and stuff like
That's
that.
always going to
And
be the question of the
yeah,
ethics, and I think that's a fair question to have that conversation. Like, it's not
yeah,
out of the spectrum of discussion where it's like, okay, like if you're going to bring that up, I think that is worth talking about. But at the same time, it's like, okay, for what you're watching and what it is, if you're kind of morbidly curious by it, or enthralled by it, or both, or repelled by it, because I know there probably are a lot of people that even hate watching it. Like, it's just
yeah,
one of those things where it's just, I think it is just such a fascinating sort of layering of a completely divisive individual who's kind of found his, like, I don't think Nathan Fielder could really work as like a movie comedian type, like, like when somebody, like when a comedian kind of like breaks out and has a moment.
stars in a Judd Apatow movie or
I don't
something.
think that can work for him. I think that, like we've seen him pop up in small roles in, like, The Night Before and things like that, but I think something like this, or Nathan For You, and it works, and it kind of gets across what he's best at, which is kind of being a master manipulator, but also kind of digging through his own problems in a way. And I think all of that is well worth
Yeah,
having a conversation about. At least I think, like, again, like, I don't disagree with the ethical quandaries that this thing raises, because there are times where it's like, okay, like, you know are you leading this person on? Are you manipulating them in a way to get them to say these things, or are they just saying it themselves? And because, again, this is an edited show, even though it is quote unquote real life, you have to wonder how much of it is manufactured, or some of it is kind of, played up for the camera, because, in real time things play out much differently. So with that in mind, you have to kind of look at it for what it is, or what the presentation is. And so watching it, I just think it's a very bizarre but clever conceit overall. And I think that the smartest thing about the show is that it's not basically one sort of thing. It's continually
yeah.
evolving. It's
It almost seems like he's doing it on the fly as
yeah,
well. Like he's almost like going, okay, well, this happened. He left. So, okay, I need to pivot now. What can I do? Okay, insert myself into here. Okay, this guy leaves and just stops answering my calls. What do I do to like pivot there? And it is interesting how it morphs into something completely different. And
morph.
I cannot wait
But that's even
to
important as
see.
well, because I think that you need to show when it's not going to be the same episode every time. Like, the rehearsal is going to have different results for different people,
Oh,
right?
totally.
Like,
Yeah.
if you have the same results every
The
time,
Cane's chicken or whatever that
the
they build
Raising
too,
Cane's
like
chicken, oh
Raising
my god,
Cane's chicken.
it's
And I'm like,
incredible.
it's that kind of stuff where I'm like, man, they would have had to get Raising Cane's permission to like show their logo and build like a thing. And I'm like, I want to know the process. And it's stuff like that. And like when he's talking to the woman who he's co-parenting
Angela,
with,
right? Yeah.
and Angela, and like at times it seems like she's laughing, like, or trying to hold in laughter when she's saying something to him. And I'm like, okay, but she does know that she's in a rehearsal, so that kind of does make sense if she is real. But it's just these layers of like what is real and what's not. You start to get confused, and I think that's part of the illusion of the whole thing, is like you don't know what part is the rehearsal and what is real life
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's just
I
like
mean, does it
I
have
think that stuff
is
all
it a piece of, is it a vegetable or a fruit with a sticker on it, or
yeah.
is it not? Is it
Yeah,
like
yeah,
i-
yeah.
is it a
That's
funnel cake?
exactly. It's so funny. Like, and then that it makes me question it, and it's just like it's so great. No, it's not great. Harry Potter and the Cursed
Oh boy.
Child. um, I, what? Probably a hot take. I don't know. I think people quite enjoy this show, but I went with my mother and father and wonderful wife to go see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which has gotten great reviews. It's a sequel to the Harry Potter books, not movies, I think. And we've been waiting to see it for a long time. My parents are big, wizarding worldies. Is that what you call them?
They're butterbeer
um,
fanatics.
and take J.K. Rowling out of this. She sucks. She's awful. Let's get that out of the way. She's horrible. Fuck her. Um, I was still like the Harry Potter movies enough. I didn't watch them up until the last movie, and I binged them before the last movie came out. I hadn't seen a single one before
You
then.
do that with a lot of
Not
fantasy stuff, Game of Thrones as
because
well.
I'm not a big fantasy guy, right? So there are these big cultural phenomenons, and I feel left out because I haven't watched them. So by the end, I go, I need to be part of the conversation for the end of these
I'm gonna
things.
go
So
watch
like,
Lord of the Rings at
I
Cinesphere.
yeah, I'm gonna go see them way after you should. Anyways, excited to see the play. Live theater. I like musicals. I do think that those are super enjoyable to see live. This not a musical, just people talking. We go to see this play. It's usually split up into two parts. So when it originally came out, there would be part one, part two. You could either see them like an afternoon and an evening show and have a break in between, or you could go see them on two separate nights and it would be two parts. Which was, I think, each part being like 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it ended up being like almost 5.5 hours or something total. The version we saw was 3.5 hours with an intermission. Um, so everything in one night. So they do cut out a lot of stuff.
So it's
Um,
truncated then.
and it is a truncated version of it. And you can tell at times, but I also don't know if I wanted more. So I said this to people where it felt both rushed and overlong, which is a very hard thing to do, where it's just like, oh, it felt like a lot was cut from this and you rushed through certain things. But also I felt like I was here for a fucking eternity and that it would never end. And I just felt like it didn't lend itself well to like a live theater vibe, because theater acting is very different than film acting. And maybe that's just, I'm a film guy. So like theater acting, for me, I'm watching Harry Potter. I think it should feel like the movies, right? Not like a theater show. So when I go to it and it's a little overacted because they have to kind of perform outward.
You're
And,
projecting to an audience.
you're projecting, the style of acting is different. You need to be big and flamboyant and over the top because you're kind of presenting to this whole theater. And that was its first thing where I'm like, oh, I should have known it was going to be like this, but I'm not really vibing with how these kids are acting, or the impersonations from some characters that are from the books and certain things like that. And then on top of that, it's really like dialogue driven, and it relies really heavily on some magical special effects that they use, which are quite impressive. Like the stage design and the magic tricks that they do throughout the show, for a live theater show, were like, oh shit, that was really cool how they pulled that off, that illusion or whatever they were doing. But then as a negative on that made it feel like a Universal Studios show. So my brain throughout this whole thing, I went from being bored to, oh, this is kind of, it's a sequel to Harry Potter. I still am like, like, if people don't know, it's about Harry's son and he becomes friends with Malfoy's son. And it's about them at their years of Hogwarts and them using, a time turner to kind of mess around with stuff and things like that. That doesn't give too much away. So the idea is kind of interesting. Like it's, your classic legacy sequel kind of thing, right? So I'm intrigued by that. But then as it's going, I'm like, oh man, this really just feels like a Universal Studios show that you would go see at the theme park.
Like
That is
Waterworld.
stretched. Like that is stretched out. Yeah. Or the Indiana Jones show that was at Disney and stuff like that. And here, I'll get to that. I both mean this sort of as like a criticism and an insult, but also like not, because I like those shows when I'm at a theme park.
Right.
Like
And they know what they are, right?
they know what they are, and they're short. They're 30 minutes at most. They're like an hour long. I think there's like an hour long Lion King show that you can see at Disney or whatever. But at most they're an hour, and they're usually so you can escape the, Floridian humidity and get into some air conditioning and you watch a show for an hour, right? Where I'm paying $130 for cheap seats, right? Like I'm up in the balcony. Like if you want good seats, they're hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And maybe that would have helped seeing the actors right in front of you and the fire and the magic right in front of you. But um I spend $130. I don't necessarily just want to see a Universal Studios show. Like I don't mind that being an extra thing that's when I'm at Universal Studios. But like when I go and make a night out of it and go with my parents, like I expected something of higher quality, and I don't know if my expectations were too high or anything. Like I don't even know what my expectations were, but like the special effects are great, set design's great. I think the story was kind of lacking when you get into it. You're just like, wait, what do they want to do? And you're like, that's kind of it. And you're like, oh, who's the villain? Okay, that's the villain. Oh, you're going to go back in time, and that's cool. You revisit moments from the book or the movie or whatever. And like, I think it could make for a cool movie when they do it in 12 years or 10 years. If Warner Brothers wants to do that, who knows what Zaslav wants to do. After these Fantastic Beast movies, who knows?
God,
There's no problem with problematic people.
Let's
though,
cancel
so let's
those
keep going.
movies. Get rid of them. That would be the one silver lining with that. But it's interesting because we always talk about that as well, where it's like the Fantastic Beasts films were placeholders to Cursed Child, and there being kind of an expectation of like, okay, well, if those movies aren't that good, well, at least this might be a little bit more.
We'll get Cursed Child as long as we can convince everyone to come.
But now, if you don't like the stage version, which again, stage versus film is a different translation, and
I'm in the minority here. I think most people who see this play, I think, really enjoy it. But I have heard a couple people message me and go, the 2-night version is better, and the single night version kind of butchers it. And then I go, did I really want to go see it? Like me and my dad after the show, my dad loves Harry Potter. Like he loves the Wizarding World.
Planet of the Apes and Harry Potter
is so
Mike
weird.
Rohrbeck is an enigma wrapped in a riddle.
He really loves Harry Potter. And he was even disappointed because he was like, man, it was just really slow and like the story wasn't super interesting. And like we both said, like, would it make for a good movie? And we think it probably would, right? Like if you had the actors come back 22 years later, that's how far it is. So like they're really just killing time until
Harry,
do that.
we gotta go back.
And I think it could, you'd have to tweak it a bit there. Like I'd be worried about the digital de-aging you'd have to do, or a CG character here and there, or you'd have to recast some
or Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al.
You'd have to, some people who have passed away, like you'd have to kind of recast those roles and stuff like that, or do a gross digital version of them, but like, or reuse footage from the other movies, which could work. But there's a cool idea there. It's just the execution was just it's really dry, and it really was like, I'm like, I don't know, maybe in a movie this is like little, you trim a lot of the fat, you kind of move to the action sequences, you kind of balance it a little bit better. And just seeing people act on stage, like you were just waiting for the next magic trick to happen or the next special effect. And like the guy who played Harry, I kept leaning over to Nevis and I was like, he yells a lot in the movie because he's like a dad now. So,
dads yell.
But every time he yelled, Eric, he sounds like Will Ferrell when Will Ferrell yells, and that's all I could get out of it. Like that was all in my head. Like every time he yelled, it sounded like Will Ferrell yelling, and I kept laughing. And I'm like, I shouldn't have this response.
It's like Emilio.
And then I was just bored for a lot of it. And then like, when certain characters, like some people nail their impersonations of them and they're like, oh, okay, they're just doing the movie version of that character and they're doing a pretty good impersonation. And then a couple other people are not. And then you kind of like, Nevis had a good point of just being like, you kind of have to do one or the other. You either have to be like, this is not the movie version. It's not even the book version. It's its own thing. Like Hermione is black in this play, right? And like, but then you have people like Moaning Myrtle or Professor McGonagall who like sound like exactly like they do in the movies,
like
right?
Shirley Henderson and Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah. And you not Brendan Gleeson. He was Mad
Mardigan
or whatever. Mardigan, yeah.
Was it Mad Mardigan or is that
Professor McGonagall? 10 points for Gryffindor, like that. What's her name?
Emma Thompson.
Emma. No, not Emma Thompson.
It's been so long.
Professor McGonagall.
Maggie Smith.
Maggie Smith. Yeah,
Oh,
Maggie Smith. Yeah.
sorry, I was thinking
I
of like
blanked too. I knew it was, it's an old British lady.
How dare you?
So
Maggie Smith.
I
is
love
a
Maggie
treasure.
Smith. I love Maggie Smith, and she's great as McGonagall. But anyways, then you have people. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but other characters that I won't say that don't sound like the people from the movies.
Right.
There's like two big characters, both villain. One sort of a villain.
We already
one
mentioned
a
Moaning
villain.
Myrtle.
Well, yeah. Still very horny. And then those didn't sound like them, and one was very flamboyant and over the top, which the character is in the movie, but the actor who does them, I think, does a good job with it. Where in here, it's just like, ooh, this is very much a play. So, anyways, I really didn't enjoy it. I was quite bored throughout, and then you go, ooh, magic, and then like there are a couple moments where you're like, oh shit, that was like really well done. Like there was a moment where characters, how they get sucked into the telephone booth to like go into like, so they do that on stage, and it's just the way that they transition the person where you don't realize they leave the stage to like the little robot thing that goes up to the thing, and then the cloak gets sucked into the thing is really cool the first time you see it. Or when someone has to drink that thing that makes them transform into someone else, like, how they're pulling off these illusions, but the way that they do them is actually quite fun.
There's some ingenuity to it.
And then when like the Dementors are flying, like they fly through the audience and shit, and there's like a really like cool moment at the end of the first act there. And like, so there is some interesting stuff. And I think like if you're a hardcore wizzy, is that wizarding? You might like it, but my dad didn't like it. My mom, who loves everything, God bless her, liked it. And then Nevis was mixed. So, we had a crew that was kind of on all the spectrums there, but like it.
Well, inconsistency, I think, does play a role when like, if the actors aren't on the same page, and especially when it is theater, and, you can have great sets and, sharp production design overall, but, you have to kind of be on that same page. Right. And, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wonder as well, the way that you're saying that, originally it's about a 5-hour play. I wonder if they do adapt this into a movie, if they try to expand it into like a series of films instead of just doing a one and done,
which
kind
they
of
did
thing.
for Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, because why not? Or The Hobbit, even, right? Like, look at that.
I think they would. Because one of my biggest problems, like right away with it, is that they skip over years 1 through 3 of these kids, like, and they do kind of like how a play would do, where they have to like do it all in one sequence, so they keep moving things around, and the kids run away and they come back and they're older, but it was like all done so quickly, where maybe in the longer version they spend a little bit more time there. I could see them building up to what the finale of this movie is over, like they did with Harry Potter, where it's maybe over 4 movies or 3 movies, probably a trilogy. Like I would see like, I don't know, how many years do you go to Hogwarts for, from your 10 until you're 18? Are you 8 years? And that's why they did that many movies.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I guess, yeah, you could do the 1 year, like you could, here's the thing. It depends on how long they sign those actors to come back. Does the original cast want to come back for 8 more movies? Like, I don't think so.
Except for
but
Rupert
maybe
Grint.
because oh yeah, he's all in.
I mean,
I think
he's on
Radcliffe would be
Servant,
like,
so I think he's doing okay.
yeah, I think they'd all be down, especially because they wouldn't be the stars of the movie, right? Like they would be. They'd be the face of it. They're coming back, much like, but it would be like the older Star Wars, cast.
They're going to say Jurassic
back,
World
right?
Dominion.
No, I'm not referencing that movie ever again. It doesn't exist.
But with Top Gun Legacy, Top Gun Maverick doing so well, I think that Legacy sequel thing is going to be even more appealing.
Yeah.
I mean, like Reese Witherspoon was even talking about it for Legally Blonde 3. So it kind of shows you that, like, I think it's kind of giving actors that maybe have had some, franchise fatigue in the things that have made them either popular or they've had to do multiple times, if they've taken a break, and then it's like, okay, maybe down the line I can come back to this and do something that's on par with the first one again, that was more creative, or at least kind of felt new and fresh. Because I understand when, like, a job, a steady job is a steady job, and if you're doing well, but also like sometimes when you're doing 5 Marvel movies and you're missing out on doing the small weird creative thing in
Yeah.
between, it can, as an actor, I think it can kind of you know make you a little bit, what's that word I'm looking for, it can, you can kind of just become complacent in a way. And
Yeah.
so with Radcliffe going out and doing the Swiss Army Mans and that kind of stuff, like, I think it helps. But also, like, these actors in particular, they've been typecast, like, it's, I don't think Emma Watson and Radcliffe and Rupert Grint have really kind of broke
Yeah.
the mold of,
Broken out. Yeah.
and that happens with a lot of actors, where it's like the
Stuck to a franchise, and that's what you're known
yeah,
for.
it
And then,
defines who they are, and then when they're in other things, people can't see them as those characters, and it becomes weirdly like stunt casting or something like that. Like, obviously Emma Watson kind of tried with Beauty and the Beast and that kind of stuff, and it didn't work. But it kind of all goes back to, like, certain actors. Like, you think of someone like Stallone, like, every time you see Stallone in it, you either think Stallone's Rocky or Rambo, or like even like
Yeah.
someone like Sarah Michelle Gellar in Buffy. It's like she kind of had a bit of a go in the late 90s, but everybody always saw her as that character. It's hard to break that mold, and then going back to it is kind of almost like you feel defeated by the thing that defined you, basically. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Radcliffe's a good segue. I think. Did we miss anything
well, I was
else
gonna say maybe
news wise?
Chris Angel could play Harry
I,
Potter.
I brought I brought up Chris Angel to Nevis on the way home.
Frank.
I was like, you know what? If I want to see magic, I'll just pay to see Chris Angel.
Yeah,
Okay, like,
and it'll be
anyways,
shorter too.
yeah. Let's move on to TIFF Talk 2022, baby. So to end the show, we like to do this segment called TIFF Talk. Sometimes we do individual episodes like we did with the galas and special presentations, which you guys can go check out. It's a separate episode. It's not a numbered episode, but it is right here on this channel, whether it's on YouTube or on podcast services. So you guys can check that out. We broke down all of the films, or we went through them and kind of broke down the gala and special presentations categories and talked about what we were excited for, and Eric's his top of his list kind of thing and things like that. But yesterday and was it just yesterday? No, Tuesday and Wednesday we got TIFF announcements, didn't we?
Did we?
Yes, we got Platform, and
Oh,
then we
yes. Yeah.
got the next day we got Discovery, Midnight Madness, and Wavelengths. So
Matt's favorite
tons of
category, wavelengths.
no, stop. I know I shit on Wavelengths a couple weeks ago, but I was just joking. So lots to go over here, Eric. So do you want to start with Platform, like go in order,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
what
Let's
do you
do
want
it
to
as the way that TIFF intended, by chronological release.
All right. Do you have it in front of
No,
you,
I
the
don't.
Platform stuff? Okay, because I was gonna go to the
We're
bathroom.
never prepared.
But
I was gonna
I
go to
know,
the bathroom
I have
too.
it. Okay. Well, okay.
Let's
Do you
pause
want to?
this?
No. Do you want to go now while I read
Sure.
them and talk about
I'm
it?
gonna go
and
to the
then,
wizarding world.
and
Excuse me.
then I'll go when you get
Okay,
back.
but
All right. So this week, major announcements from TIFF for this year. So on Tuesday morning, we got, or it was Wednesday, and it was today, the Midnight Madness. I don't know what day it is, everyone. It's very hard. Like I said, I'm on the last couple weeks of my contract on Family Feud. Do you have a job for me? I would love that. If you need someone, hit me up. I can do anything. I'm a Swiss Army knife. But Platform, TIFF announced their whole Platform lineup. If you're not familiar with Platform, it's kind of their in competition section where they have a jury that goes through and picks a winner of the program that gets $20,000 Canadian for the best film in the program. So the films in Platform this year are Charcoal by Carolina Markowitz. Platform's opening night film is Emily by Francis O'Connor. We have The Gravity by Cedric Ito. We have Hawa, and Eric's not here to correct me, so if I butcher these names, I apologize. Hawa by Maimouna Decourier. We have How to Blow Up a Pipeline by Daniel Goldhaber. We have Rice Boy Sleeps by Anthony Shim. We have Subtraction by Manny Haghigi. We have Thunder by Carmen Jacquier. We have Torres Husband by Rima Das. And we have Viking by Stephanie Lafleur. So an eclectic mix of films here. The platform section's always kind of super interesting. I'm not like super familiar with a lot of the films on this list, but Eric, I just went over Eric's back.
Hello.
I just went over all the films in the we went for Mountain Dew. Nice. I've had 2 beers, which is why I've had to go to the bathroom. Anything off the top of your head from the platform lineup that stuck out to you? Because I was just saying, like, most of it is unknown to me. I haven't really gone into detail, so we don't have great commentary for this probably. But I was saying the platform section always really interesting. Like, I feel like,
Well, that's weird. Some of the, I mean, ironically, that we're covering the discoveries, but partly, this platform is also this this platform, this program, the platform, is also a place for discovery because it over the last few years. When I say a few years, like 2015 to now, we've gotten films like Moonlight and Jackie and Lady Macbeth, all of which were in the same year, and introduce actors like Florence Pugh to a much wider audience, and that was kind of the ground floor kind of movie. And then you have films that have played like Beast with Jesse Buckley, again another actor who now is going through the Hollywood system and kind of becoming a bigger name. So it's always a kind of an interesting place to find new talents, whether they be on screen or behind the camera. It's always great to see what could be the next great filmmaker, and obviously this is the one sort of section that has a jury as well. So Sound of Metal is another movie that was a platform release, and look how well that did with Riz Ahmed and directed by Darius Martyr. So there are films and filmmakers that go on to greater success, but their films in that grouping do quite well. Also, yeah, I think Sound of Metal probably would be one of the biggest ones that has played in that section so far. I mean, it was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars, so
it is one of the movies that they list here. And at 13,000 Feet, Rocks, Jackie,
Custody,
Death of Stalin, Moonlight, Lady Macbeth, High Rise. So always an interesting category, but I haven't done enough research. Again, sorry everyone. I'm kind of going through this for the first time on the podcast because I'm just busy.
Well, I believe
that's what we do.
I believe there's the Emily Bronte biopic with Emma McKay, which I'm sure is probably going to be one of the bigger ones in that group, just because of Emma McKay kind of being a rising star. And I think Bleecker Street picked that up in the US, so it already has American distribution. A lot of these movies usually don't have distribution or have a smaller studio behind it. Like Moonlight did have A24 at that point. But something like Jackie got picked up by Searchlight after it played the fest. Although that would have been picked up no matter what. But it does, again.
Totally.
And this is, I mentioned this, I'm sure you heard this as you were taking your whiz. This is
I did.
Jury led section.
I mentioned that too.
So, sorry I'm repeating what Matt said.
No, it's okay. It is the only program to have that. I said it's kind of like they're in competition, kind of.
It's like their can thing.
Yeah. Moving on to Discovery. If you're not familiar with the Discovery program, a lot of first and second features from different filmmakers. So a lot of these might be unknowns, might star some people but or maybe not. But I'll go through these. I already said if I butcher them, I apologize. Eric and I just like to be with you guys. We're learning just as you're learning. I'm learning what films are playing as you're learning. I kind of have an idea because I looked briefly this morning. I don't even know what day or time it is because earlier, Eric, when you were going to the bathroom, I'm like, was this announced today or yesterday? And I was like, I think it was today.
Like, you almost look high as you're saying this. The way that you're kind of, I mean, I think you're just like, maybe you look tired, or maybe I'm tired.
Well, I'm doing that on purpose, but like, I'm definitely also tired. Yeah. So, all right, we got Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. That sounds dope. By Ike Alberto, also a dope name. We got Baby Ruby by Bess Wohl. Carmen by Benjamin Millipede.
So that is Natalie
Um,
Portman's husband, the dance choreographer on Black Swan. That's his
Oh,
feature
okay.
directorial debut, and I think Sony Pictures
Cool.
Classics has it in the U.S.
Okay, cool. We have Daughter of Rage by Laura Baumeister. We have
The
Agazo.
Bowmeister.
We got Agaza Weekend by Basil Cahill. We have I Like Movies by Chandler Levac.
So
Um,
that is she is a former film critic, used to write
Yep.
for the Globe and Mail, I think, as like a freelancer.
Yep. She also used to work at TIFF as well.
Yeah.
We both know Chandler. I'm excited to see her movie. That's awesome. Like, she's done some shorts. I think one of her shorts played TIFF a couple years ago as well. So
And it
she
takes
made a
place in the
feature.
early 2000s. There's a trailer out for
Yeah.
it where it's like,
Yeah.
oh man, I remember that, and being that annoying
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it. It's great. The opening night film for Discovery is The Inspection by Elegance Bratton,
which is an A24 movie, and I believe Gabriel Union has a co-starring role in that movie.
Cool. A Long Break by David Pertskalava. I apologize. That's a cool name, but Pertskalava. Cool. We have Pussy by Joseph Amenta. We have Return to Seoul by Davy Chow,
which played at Cannes and was picked up by Sony Pictures Classics.
Cool. SPC loves these.
SPC,
Rosie,
the Discovery section.
Rosie by Gail Maurice. We have Runner by Marion Mateus. We have Shimoni by Angela Wanjiku Waimai. We have Snow and the Bear by Selkin Ergen. We have Something You Said Last Night by Luis de Philippes.
So Elevation has that. That's a Canadian directorial debut, feature length.
Cool. Susie Searches by Sophie Cargman. Sweet As by Jub Clerk. The Taste of Apples is Red by Ihab Tarabai. We have This Place by V.T. Nayani. We have Unruly by Malu Raymond. Until Branches Bend by Sophie Jarvis. When Morning Comes by Kelly Fife Marshall. And The Young Arsonist by Sheila Pye. So that's Discovery. So thank you for the context for those. Those would be the only ones that I was sort of familiar with. Any more?
For platform, did you read?
I did read them all.
What the one title I wanted to also mention? Is it How to Blow Up a Pipeline?
Yep.
So
by Daniel Goldhaber.
So that is the director of Cam, which is available on Netflix, which is a really solid little horror movie about a cam girl who discovers that she has kind of like a doppelganger. And this will also segue nicely into Midnight Madness, because I know Peter Kaplowski has programmed that one and has been very adamant. And so when Peter talks about movies outside of Midnight Madness, it's always good to kind of listen up, especially if you're a genre
Midnight
fan.
Madness or a Vanguard movie.
Yes.
Probably more. Love that. Discovery, always love checking out movies in that program as well, because again, a lot of these don't know much about them. You just kind of go by, whether someone has it picked up or who's in it or just a little description. So I'm excited to kind of dive deeper into these. And again, we'll be here for hours if we did that. So I'm not gonna quite do that on this show.
But if we review some of these films, we definitely will dive deeper.
Closer to the festival, when we do our TIFF preview show, which will be right before the festival, we'll probably have some of these movies that we'll talk about of our picks of what we want to watch and cover and stuff like that. And then Midnight Madness, a program that Eric and I both really love. Like, I think one of the most fun times you can have at the movies, not just a festival, is going to a midnight show at Midnight Madness.
It's like after eating your vegetables, you get a nice little treat at the end of the day.
You get a Mountain Dew. I'm sure Peter loves us comparing it to Mountain Dew.
Midnight Madness Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew presents Midnight Madness.
Hell yeah.
That sounds great.
We should pitch that to him.
Peter, friend of the show, we interviewed him a couple years ago, and we just know Peter through, the Toronto film community and stuff like that. But Eric always brings up that he has really eclectic taste and always has like really interesting programming. And since he's taken over Midnight Madness, every year it's always very, very interesting, whether it's stuff that I expected might be there or something I've never heard of, or, the same that I've been saying with some of these other
Yeah,
programs.
it's a
But
nice
here are
cross
the
section, right? Like
yeah,
it kind of feels like, okay, Midnight Madness, you expect certain things. You expect, horror, gory B movies that will kind of play well to an audience that will kind of interact with it. You'll get some Eastern influence films, whether they be, kung fu or Hong Kong cinema. But now, like, what I love, and those are still there, but like what I love as well is that Peter is peppering in sort of, again, some kind of titles that kind of would feel more like Vanguard movies, or films that are kind of a little bit out of left field. And Midnight Madness doesn't necessarily have to be, one definitive genre. It can be the films that are a little bit sort of
yeah,
out of sync or out of center with what you'd
with
expect.
everything
Yeah.
else, yeah, too, yeah. So we have The Blackening by Tim Story. We have the closing night film, which is Leonore Will Never Die. We have Pearl by Ty West, the X prequel. We have The People's Joker by Vera Drew. We have Project Wolf Hunting by Kim Hong Soon. We have Sick by John Hyams. We have Sisu by Jalmari Helander. We have Venus by Jean Balaguero. We have VHS 99 by Flying Lotus, Johannes Roberts, Maggie
Vulgar
Levin.
tourist Johannes
Yeah,
Roberts.
yeah. Who just did Resident Evil,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like,
Welcome to Raccoon
um,
City.
Maggie Levin, Tyler McIntyre, and Vanessa and Joseph Winter. And then we have the opening night film, which is Weird, the Al Yankovic story. Danny Radcliffe. That's the good transition there from Cursed
A
Child. But
Roku
um,
production.
yeah, Roku original.
Yeah.
So I guess we get to see it in a theater, which is nice because that wouldn't have been the case otherwise.
Right.
Um,
Although,
I don't even
I mean, maybe
like.
they're planning some sort of. I mean, I don't know in Canada, but maybe they are
I
planning
don't
some
think
sort of
so.
limited. Apple sometimes
No.
does, so I was wondering if
Yeah,
like.
maybe. I don't know what the fuck Roku does. But like yeah, like you said, an eclectic mix here. You have kind of the, not a huge name horror movie, but Pearl being a prequel to X, which came out earlier this year. Like I think that's kind of your, more one for you kind of thing. Like here's these, A24 studio
The commercial
horror
play
movie.
that kind of
Commercial
has a
play,
fan
yeah.
base, partly because of Ty West, and also
Yeah.
partly because you have another film in the series that, two movies that are coming out this year, one already been released, this one
Yeah.
playing the fall festival circuit, because it is also playing Venice. For Canadians listening to this, I would recommend, maybe if you're interested in this but are kind of hesitant because of the September release date, it does not have Canadian distribution as of yet. It probably will.
Hasn't A24 haven't they released things themselves in Canada
They
sometimes
have
too?
sometimes. So with, I mean, this is a whole other can of worms and an
Yeah,
inside
we don't have to
baseball
go.
thing.
We're
But
already way
but
over.
in terms of like Elevation, VVS, Mongrel Media have all handled their stuff before. The
Yeah.
rare occasion you'll get
Sony
Sony
Pictures.
Pictures, because they
Yeah.
had the end of the tour, and more recently Bodies. So it's always kind of like a crapshoot there. So at this
It's
moment,
literally whoever wants to pick it up,
yeah,
right? They
yeah.
can pay for
Unless
it.
a studio in Canada already has it at the script level, then it's theirs.
Automatically then,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you're hesitant to see Pearl because it opens in September during the festival, and you're from Canada, still maybe go see it, because it might not come out until October, or I mean, who
Yeah.
knows? But it probably will. But still see it if you want it.
Yep, totally. The People's Joker seemed interesting. They're calling it a legal superhero movie, which I think is really funny. Just using that to kind of pitch it. I've never seen any of the VHS movies,
Oh God.
so I know they're anthologies,
They're hit or
and they kind
miss.
of.
They're hit or miss.
I remember the ABCs of Death is what I'm thinking about, and I fucking hated those
Yeah, those
movies.
were bad.
And
I
like I
watched the
hated
last
them.
VHS as well. There was one segment I
I like
kind
the
of liked.
99 time period, so
Yeah,
I'm kind of intrigued by that.
yeah, because
But
the '94 one, which was last year,
yeah,
that was released through
how was
Shutter.
that? Because I am also interested in
It
that
was
timeline too.
there's one good segment, which is this investigative reporter who's following a story about an underground cult that are taking homeless people and sacrificing
Okay.
them to a rat god named Rotman.
Okay,
And that's probably the
I
most
love that.
fun. But yeah, it's all, I mean, we've talked about this before. Anthology's always kind of a mixed bag where, like,
Yeah,
some are better than others, and you're never going to kind of get like that kind of same consistency of high quality throughout. So maybe there will be some fun ones on there. I'm curious about the Johannes Roberts segment, especially with a guy that
yeah.
is kind of like very playful with his soundtrack. So
I'm absolutely into that, right? So like just because the last ones weren't your thing, like again, new anthology, new filmmakers could be something
yeah,
completely different. So
seen them all,
I
might as well
definitely
watch it.
the 99 thing is really the thing that's kind of getting me, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, okay, like that's a fun time period for us.
Well,
So
also it's the year
um
that Blair Witch came out, so I
yeah,
wonder if there will be being a found
some
footage
reference,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. I'm interested in Sick, the John Hyams movie. It's written by Kevin Williamson. You guys would know him for writing Scream and a lot of other things, but
How
in the
dare you?
horror
He
space,
directed
Scream.
Teaching Mrs. Tingle.
And then John Hyams, who directed Universal Soldier, Day of Reckoning, and much more. But I'm curious about that. I'm definitely intrigued. What else do we got here? I'll see Pearl. I liked X enough to be interested in Pearl. Like I don't know. I don't think I needed Pearl, but and weird the Al Yankovic story. I think that's the only one out of these.
Wasn't there
Like
a
I
few
love.
other ones that were announced on either?
No, they all sound good,
No, no,
but
no. I mean, like wasn't there a movie that I thought like either Peter posted it on his Instagram or on Twitter. There was like a film from the director of Rare Exports that was playing with, it has like a Finnish soldier who is taking on Nazis.
yeah, Sisu.
Sisu, yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of
Yeah, I
curious
mentioned
about,
that
yeah.
in the that. No, I'm not saying these are the only things I'm that sounds cool too. I liked Rare Exports and Big Game. Yeah, it's he returns to TIFF with a gory World War II action epic that pits one hard to kill Finn against Nazi soldiers in Finnish Lapland.
Finn
So
Wolfhard.
like yeah, I thought that's what they meant. Yeah, I'm obviously that sounds awesome too. Like I just was saying, like the only thing that will make me get out of or go to midnight, I think might be weird. The
Right.
Al Yankovic story. Like I feel
And
like
also if you don't have a
I'm.
early morning screening.
That's also true. Um, like I'm getting to that point where we see so much during the day and we get up
Too
early and
old.
see those early. I'm like, I love midnight. And if someone says this movie's awesome, you want to go see it at midnight. Like I do regret those times where I didn't go see something at midnight and I saw it at another time. But there are times where I regretted going because I'm like, I'm so tired. Or like I'll fall asleep in the midnight movie and then still be tired the next morning for my 8 a.m. or whatever. So all of these sound good. Like Midnight Madness, I'm always down to watch any of it. Like it's always on my short list because I do trust Peter. And yeah, sometimes it's hit or miss if it vibes with you or not. But like everything we mentioned here, I'm definitely intrigued by. The Blackening even sounds cool. Like it's based on a three-peat comedy sketch about like horror genre film tropes and like the basic thing in the movie is if the entire cast of a horror movie is black, who dies first? And I think like that's really it's haven't seen that sketch, but I'm like, do I just wait now and just go see the movie? But or I might have seen it because it when it was being passed around online. But Project Wolf Hunting seems like a classic Midnight Madness pick, you
Oh
know,
wait, didn't Tim
like
Story also direct the Fantastic Four movies?
hmm, huh,
Hold
I
on,
don't
I gotta
know,
look this up right now.
like the ones for 20th Century
Yeah.
Fox. Or like obviously they were. You mean like the early ones?
The early ones,
Um,
yeah, like the Michael.
he did. He directed
Fuck
Fantastic
yeah, I
Four
knew it.
and Barbershop and Taxi.
I was like, that name sounds
Um,
so familiar.
yeah, he did both of them. Yeah, you're right, Eric. Yeah, he did Barbershop, Taxi, both Fantastic Four movies. Hurricane Season, Think Like a Man, Ride Along, Think Like a Man 2, Ride Along 2. Uh, he did the 2019 Shaft
Oh,
movie.
that's awful.
And he did Tom and Jerry, which came
God,
out a
that's
couple
awful
of years
too.
ago too.
I'll still
So
see it though. I like the concept.
yeah, I do too. Like, so
And Peter
I'm
did
definitely
compare
down,
it to The Cabin in the Woods, so I was like,
which I'm all for,
yeah.
right?
And if you haven't seen the, there's a really great documentary that Peter also kind of mentioned when doing the trivia, or the kind of questions that were coming up with, like,
Oh, the
the
hints.
hints.
Yeah.
Black Noir on Shudder, which is
Yeah,
a great,
Shudder.
really great look at African Americans and Black culture within the horror genre. It's really well done, and it covers
Yep.
everything. For, like, I mean, it's dated now because but it went up to all the way to Get Out. So
Love that.
yeah.
Okay, and we're out of time, so we can't talk about wavelengths.
Wait, we have a time limit?
I'm kidding. We're really deep, but I was playing into the joke, playing into the bit. Okay, and then they announced the Wavelengths program. So we have Concrete Valley by Antoine Bourges, or I don't. Yeah. Anyways,
Alex
the
Reno just shaking his head.
Alex, if you're listening, I know you are. I'm sorry, dude. I don't know. Do you want me to like? I can't prep that much. Like, I can't. Like, what do you want from me, dude?
Alex,
Like,
we're
I'm
already
doing.
2 hours and 15 minutes into this, and it's at
I'm tired.
10:52.
We recorded a Prey review, which you guys should go check out. I thought it was really good. Anyways, De Humani Corporis Fabrica by Verena Paravel Lucian Castang Taylor. We have Dry
Oh, is that
Ground
the
Burning.
anatomy inside the human anatomy documentary?
It might be. Google it while I keep going.
Okay.
De Humani Corporis Fabrica. Dry Ground Burning by Joanna Pimita and Adderley Caros. Horse Opera. Dope name. Moira Davy. Pacification by Albert Sira. Queens of the King Dynasty. Ashley Mackenzie. Unrest by Cyril Schoblin. Will o' the Wisp by João Pedro Rodriguez. And then the shorts.
I'm kind of curious about this movie. So it played at Cannes. Cool. It says focuses on 5 hospitals in northern Paris neighborhoods. It reveals that human flesh is an extraordinary landscape that exists only through the gaze of and attention of others. So like they use like microscopic cameras and go through the body and stuff like that. But it's also very experimental. So like there's no narrative, but it just sounded kind of interesting.
Right. It's like an episode of Magic School Bus.
Yeah.
We're
gonna get to see what a rectal exam looks like today, boys and girls.
All right, kids. Come on down to Wavelengths. All right, shorts. After Work. I'm not going
with the frizz.
Filmmakers.
No way.
We got shorts. We have After Work, Bigger on the Inside. Eventide. Yeah. Fighting looks different to me now. Fighting has a 1, and they also use the letter 2. Or not letter 2, number 2. Letter number 2 as a letter. Like Fast and Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious. Fata Morgana, Horse Titter. I Thought the World of You. Moonrise, The Newest Olds, Puerta a Puerta, The Time That Separates Us, and What Rules the Invisible. And that's your shorts for Wavelengths. So Eric, you were excited for the Magic School Bus movie.
Yes. That's what it's called.
Corporis Fabrica. Imagine
the most abstract adaptation of the Magic School Bus.
Yeah, that's just
I'm
what
sure
I
the
thought of when you're
filmmakers are like, yeah, that's what we wanted.
yeah,
These
yeah,
two
yeah,
idiots to
yeah,
joke about this thing.
yeah. I can't say that I see many films from the Wavelengths program during TIFF. Usually there is the odd time where if someone says like, oh, this is really interesting, and again, whenever I watch one, I either vibe with it or hate it, and I think that's like there's no middle ground. You never go like, that was okay. like,
That was too middle
like,
brow for me.
like I think with Wavelengths movies, you're either like, that what the fuck was that, or you go, that was awesome. Like I don't really think you're ever like, I don't know, maybe catch it at Cineplex on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it's on par with The Gray
Um,
Man.
yeah, Netflix might just throw it up there on a Friday morning. So I don't know. I don't really have any. That sounds gross. The Magic School Bus movie, but like it sounds maybe cool. I don't know, but horse opera that sounds cool. I don't know what that is, but
But if it
um,
has those two things in it, it's automatic 5 stars.
and that concludes TIFF Talk 2022. I'm excited, man. We're getting close.
I know it's like
What
what,
programs do we
34
need now?
days?
Masters, that's it? Like
World contemporary world cinema.
Contemporary World Cinema, yeah, which always kind of has some bangers too. So
Are we going to the
Canadian press conference, yeah, from what I'm like pretty sure.
Okay.
But so we'll probably have a report back on that. Oh, so the Canadian program as well, right?
Duh.
Um,
We're idiots.
God, it's a Canadian film festival. I'm really tired. I'm gonna wrap it up, everyone. Thank you all for listening.
You're welcome, Alex.
I hope I didn't butcher it too much, but a fun episode. A lot of Batgirl Warner talk, a little RRR. Go see RRR, or watch it wherever. Daniel's going to Universal.
Go
The Rehearsal.
Yeah, the
Harry
fourth R
Potter.
in the RRR.
Rehearsal. It's Rise, Rebel, Roar, and Rehearsal.
I think it was Revolt. Rise, Revolt.
Yeah.
The Rehearsal.
The Rehearsal. Go check out our review for Prey, which should be up right now for you guys to listen or watch on YouTube. One-stop shop for everything. Just head over to Letterboxd, which is Untitled_movies. Everything will be there for you guys. Go check out my other work on Family Feud Canada, which is premiering in September. I'll plug it closer to its premiere, as well as on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Martin. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
I'm going to write this one off on my taxes.
Imagine we just didn't put this out. 2 hours and 20 minutes of work.
Yeah, I could see that.